Naruto, the rise of the Uzumaki Clan. Greetings, fellow multiversal adventurers. It's an honor to have you back in this saga that has us all hooked. Official channel statement, this story is 100% epic fiction. So please don't attempt real magic, the results aren't guaranteed and insurance won't cover it. The rights to this masterpiece belong entirely to its brilliant original author. We are just a barge sharing it with you. Do you want to keep being part of this amazing community? Join our ninja army of subscribers on YouTube and give this content a like. And for true fans, our Patreon has exclusive ninjutsu waiting for you. Chapter 276 Officer, he's the one who lied to me. It can be said that Chihiro's involvement greatly promoted the development of technology in the land of whirlpools. For example, breakthroughs in automobiles, walkie-talkies, and the mobile phones currently under development, largely relied on Chihiro's help. Even just the puppet technology alone solved the long-standing problem of how to attach chakra to glass that had plagued the land of whirlpools for years. Therefore, Chihiro truly deserves immense credit. If it weren't for his mother being in the Sand Village, Uzumaki-jun would have wanted to award Chihiro several more prizes to elevate the status of scientists in the land of whirlpools. After all, when glass can be attached to chakra, not only will there be no need to purchase natural crystals, saving a considerable amount of money, but chakra glass can also be used in many areas in the future. For example, televisions, computers, photographic equipment. Previously, he used photographic equipment from his original world obtained through the system. Perhaps in a few years, he will be able to use chakra-based photographic equipment. Awarding Chihiro a top technology award would be no exaggeration at all. But let's just award it to Haruko later. Uzumaki-jun sighed, muttering, otherwise, how can we improve the status of science and technology by relying on Chihiro's constant sneaking around? Chihiro is indifferent to fame and fortune, and as the daimyo of the land of whirlpools, there's nothing he can do. If pushed too far, what if Chihiro commits suicide for his mother and child? Would the land of whirlpools suffer a huge loss? So, we still have to bring Sasori to the land of whirlpools. Otherwise, unless the two of them have another child for Sasori, Chihiro and Hiko will never be able to integrate into the land of whirlpools. After all, they still have relatives in the Sand Village. To let the lonely child feel the warmth of a family. Uzumaki-jun narrowed his eyes, a slight smile playing on his lips, and said, I'm really worried sick. He really is, a kind daimyo. Achoo, achoo. Black Zetsu sneezed, frowning, and said, strange, could I catch a cold? He's lived for over 1,000 years, why has he been sneezing so much these past few years? This is unbearable. Perhaps it's just pollen irritating his nose, White Zetsu said, pointing to the jar in his hand. When do you plan to bring Lord Madara back? Because the organization was short of funds, he and his clone had started collecting pollen to sell, and surprisingly, sales were quite good. Flowers were planted in most parts of the organization. Black Zetsu frowned, pondered for a moment, and said, in a few days. Let's see if we can find a safe time. I don't want to be caught by that brat again. He always had to do some dirty work without pay, it was really unmotivating. And, that unfilial son Haguramo's chakra was constantly wandering the ninja world, monitoring it. If he were exposed, it would be dangerous. In the end, he would definitely be sealed away. Alright. White Zetsu nodded, pointing to a pile of bottles and jars beside him. The pollen is all ready, we can send it to sell. Winter is coming in a few days. We should also prepare winter supplies, otherwise it'll be troublesome if people die. It's okay. Black Zetsu said indifferently, just say you were summoned by Mom. They'll be happy. Anyway, they're all trash, they'll all become White Zetsu in the end. Losing one or two doesn't matter. Mom probably won't need that many White Zetsu in the end. Konoha. Jiraiya. Hiruzen Sarutobi took a drag of his cigarette, looking at Danzo in front of him, frowning. Do you know where he went? No. Danzo shook his head. The Anbu who followed him have all been shaken off. So, even you, as his teacher, don't know. How could he, the Dark Ninja, know? After the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki incident, Danzo's hard-earned reputation is ruined. So, sigh. Hiruzen Sarutobi stood up dejectedly, his back hunched, and said, never mind him. He sighed inwardly. Tsunade had developed hemophobia and, after returning to Konoha, had stayed at the Senju estate, rarely venturing out. Hiruzen knew, if Tsunade couldn't overcome this, Her ninja career would end there. And Orochimaru, what was he doing back in the village? Always acting mysteriously. So, everyone's changed. Hiruzen Sarutobi remarked with a sigh. Although they had all grown during this war, it was a bit too much. Who would protect Konoha then? The older generation would eventually retire, and if there were no successors, what would become of Konoha's future? Where leaves dance, fire burns eternally. The firelight would continue to illuminate the village and allow new leaves to sprout. The future belonged to the younger generation. If Konoha couldn't produce a capable and responsible ninja, to whom would the Hokage position be passed? By the way, Danzo said, frowning as he looked at Hiruzen Sarutobi, what about Tsukumo? Hatake Tsukumo, the White Fang of Konoha, who left a name for himself during World War II, but during a mission, he abandoned it to save his comrades. Now, nobody knows what happened, it's all over the village. Danzo narrowed his eyes and said, now the whole village is blaming him, criticizing him. He was originally going to take action, after all. Hatake Tsukumo and Orochimaru are currently the most popular candidates for Hokage. But, before he could act, this news inexplicably leaked out. Nobody knows who spread it. Danzo didn't know anything about it. Uzumaki. Jiraiya didn't know what to say. In the end, Gamabunta still didn't get the injection or the certificate. But he still paid, and even overpaid, because, after Gamabunta tied him up and threw him out, then disappeared with a bang. Jiraiya rubbed his kidneys, gave an awkward smile, and summoned Gamabunta again. The result was predictable. The land of whirlpools had been listed as the least welcome country for toads, and Jiraiya was told not to summon them unless absolutely necessary. They were toads from Mount Myaboku. What was the point of getting triple vaccines and rabies shots? Anyway, Jiraiya was already walking with a hunched back, all his money had gone to the hospital, and he was charged triple damages for deliberately damaging public facilities. He couldn't even explain that the toads were responsible. Sigh. This is truly outrageous. Jiraiya muttered, adopting a weary expression, why didn't Tsunade tell me the land of whirlpools was so expensive? All his years of salary, perfect attendance bonuses, performance bonuses, and war dividends were gone. And, besides a body full of injuries, he gained nothing. Jiraiya sighed, walked out of the hospital with a helpless expression, and decided he wouldn't summon toads in the land of whirlpools anymore. Although riding a toad wouldn't suit his status as a toad sage, even a sage is broke these days. So, he needed to find a way to get some money first. He should also check the laws of the land of whirlpools. He didn't want to get fined again. Just then, officer, it's him. A red-haired brat, followed by a girl in a special police uniform from the land of whirlpools, and a blue-haired girl beside him, pointed at Jiraiya and said, he's lying to children. Chapter 1. Chapter 277 School Violence in Tsunade. He held back his tears, not wanting them to fall. He didn't want his father to know he was crying. Then, he slowly stood up, head bowed, and walked towards home. He missed his father and mother. The red-haired boy came to the rows of tombstones. Looking at two tombstones close together, the boy could no longer hold back, and tears streamed down his face. Dad, Mom, Sasori misses you. Oh, finally hooked. The purple-haired woman cast her fishing rod, then, her expression froze, and she said helplessly, as expected, there are no fish in Tsunade. Seeing his sister like this, Ebizo beside him shook his head helplessly and said, after all, it's Tsunade. This is why Tsunade always breaks its alliance with Konoha and starts wars. Isn't it all for Konoha's fertile land? Although, in the end, Tsunade always lost for this reason or that reason. But they still won't give up. The fertile land is just too tempting. Chiyo cast her fishing rod into the pond again, shook her head at Ebizo, and said helplessly, why do you have to come with me to do such a boring thing? She was the only one who promised the Kazakage she would retire, but Ebizo ended up retiring with her. Ebizo chuckled and said, it's fine this way, being a ninja is tiring. Fishing is nice. It's just, they haven't caught a single fish yet. How's Sasori? Chiyo quietly looked at the fish maw in her candy and said softly, at school. How is he? Hearing his sister's words, Ebizo was silent for a moment, then sighed and said helplessly, why do you still want Sasori to stay at the academy? After he and his sister resigned, they no longer had a say in the village's affairs. Perhaps when they were still advisors to the Sand Village, Others didn't dare to be so blatant, but now, they were just ordinary ninjas fishing in the back mountains. Especially the rumors that appeared out of nowhere in Sunagakure. Now, not only do the children who lost their loved ones hate Sasori, but even his teacher hates him. So, he thinks it's better to keep Sasori by his side and raise him himself. At least that way, Sasori won't be bullied. Scorpion. Chiyo's hand holding the fishing rod trembled slightly. Looking at the swim bladder floating on the fish pond, she said in confusion, "Am I doing the right thing?" Of course, she knew about the bullying Sasori was experiencing at the academy. Every time she saw the bruises on her beloved grandson, Chiyo's heart was filled with anger. However, their parents' departure was ultimately her fault. And, ever since Chira and Hiko left, Sasori has become less talkative. Chiyo shook her head and said, "I think if he can make friends at the academy, he will definitely get through it. Become like before," smiling. "But don't you consider what Sasori thinks?" Ebizo said, unable to bear hearing Chiyo's words. "He's still a child. Once you embark on the path of a ninja, there's no difference between being a child and not," Chiyo sighed. "Besides, for Sasori, isn't this also a kind of training?" Ebizo shook his head helplessly, looking at the fishing rod in his hand, and murmured, "Satoshi will be home soon. Sister, you should go see him. After all, now he only has you and me as family." After seeing his parents, Scorpion's eyes were no longer red. Still somber, he silently walked home. Since his grandmother and great-uncle retired, the family had moved to this remote place in the back mountains. Although at first, Scorpion was unwilling, because he wanted to wait for his father and mother at home, he believed his father and mother would definitely come back, definitely. Because his father promised to teach him puppetry. But now, he had come to like it here. There were no classmates who liked to bully him, and no teachers who hated him. Scorpion still didn't understand why things had turned out this way when everyone was good friends. Creak. Opening his dilapidated wooden house, Scorpion said softly, "I'm back." He knew his grandmother and great-uncle hadn't come back yet, and no one would answer him. But deep down, he longed to hear his father and mother say to him, "Scorpion, you're back." So, he would say it every day when he came home. However, today, "Scorpion, you're back." A voice suddenly came from the dilapidated house. Upon hearing it, Sasori's face lit up with excitement, and he quickly looked up. "Dad, Mom." However, inside the small wooden house, a red-haired boy was slowly sipping his tea, then looked up, a smile on his face, and said to him, "Good afternoon, Scorpion." Chiyo looked at the surrounding scenery and sighed inwardly. This was her choice. It was the Kazukage's approval of her request for revenge against Konoha. It was to keep her away from the power center of Sunagakure. Now it seemed, perhaps this was for the best. At least Sasori wouldn't be bullied here. Chiyo smiled bitterly, shook her head, and murmured, "I wonder how Sasori did at the academy today?" She knew who was spreading the rumors in the village, and of course, Ebizo knew too. But neither of them said anything. Because, someone had to take the blame for a failed war. And she, Ebizo, the elder of Sunagakure, were just right. Looking at the dilapidated wooden house in front of her, Chiyo's face immediately lit up with a smile. She knew Sasori was probably inside quietly tinkering with his puppets, waiting for her, so she had to wear a smile now. If even she became sad, Sasori would definitely be sad in the future. Creak. Chiyo opened the door, smiling, and said, "Sasori, Grandma is back." However, before she could finish speaking, "Who are you?" Chapter 2. Chapter 278. I just wanted to take him to see his father. "Who are you?" Chiyo looked warily at the red-haired boy sitting in the chair, stroking Sasori's head. "What are you doing here?" At the same time, her hands didn't stop, she directly used her exclusive secret technique. The Chikamatsu Ten ninja summoned, shouting sharply, "Release Sasori." Then, Uzumaki-jun raised his hands, indicating he had nothing to hide. After Chiyo and her husband agreed, he secretly came to Sunagakure, and also secretly found out where Sasori and his family were staying, waiting for them in this small wooden house. After all, they were future high-tech talents. It wouldn't hurt for the daimyo of Uzumaki to wait a little longer. "Please calm down," Uzumaki-jun said with a smile, "I have no ill intentions." However, Chiyo ignored the red-haired brat, anxiously looking at Sasori, saying, "Sasori, come here quickly." Sasori was Chiyo's child. If even he Then what was the point of her living? Chiyo didn't know who sent this red-haired brat, neither the Kazakage nor any other high-ranking officials of Tsunagakure. She didn't want to know. As Sasori's grandmother, all she wanted was for Sasori to be safe and sound. But Sasori ignored Chiyo, still standing with his head down in front of Uzumaki-jun. Because this red-haired guy said he could take Sasori to see his father and mother. So, whether it was true or not, Sasori wanted to see his father and mother. No matter who came, he didn't want to leave. Scorpion. Seeing that Sasori ignored her, Chiyo's expression changed instantly, and she hissed softly, "Come here." Her tone was pleading. "You come here." What was going on? Wasn't Sasori usually very obedient? Why was he ignoring his grandmother today? What exactly did you do to Sasori? Chiyo raised her head, her face contorted with rage, and said, "I absolutely will not allow anyone to bully Sasori." Bully? Uzumaki-jun stared blankly at Chiyo, then at the head-down Sasori. He clearly hadn't done anything. "Don't worry," Uzumaki-san quickly said with a smile, "I'm just here to take Sasori to his parents' place." He was there to help people, not to stir up hatred, so he had to make that clear. However, Hearing Uzumaki-san's words, Chiyo's eyes widened instantly, and she said fiercely, "You deserve to die. Taking Sasori to see Chira and Kiko? Sasori is still a child." Tears welled up in her eyes. Puppet technique, manipulating blade. Her hands moved rapidly, manipulating the chakra threads. Hey, what are you doing?" Seeing Chiyo using the puppet technique, Uzumaki-san quickly picked up Sasori and said, "Are you crazy?" Although he knew Chiyo couldn't possibly hurt Sasori, but what if something went wrong? Skilled technicians are extremely rare. And he meant well. Why is this old woman so unreasonable? What he just said seems a bit ambiguous. After all, not many people know that Chira and Kiko are still alive. Sending Sasori to see his parents, wouldn't that just be sending Sasori to his death? Would that old woman suddenly go crazy? Just then, Grandma Sasori, whom Uzumaki-jun was holding, looked up at Chiyo and said, "I want to see Dad and Mom." Hearing Sasori's words, Chiyo's puppet paused, and then, tears streamed down her face as she pleaded, "Your Dad and Mom are already." "Scorpion, come with the Grandma." Sasori was silent for a moment, then shook his head and said, "I want to see Dad and Mom, because they promise Sasori you'll teach him to make puppets." "Grandma can do that too." Chiyo quickly said, "Grandma can teach Sasori. Your dad's puppetry skills were all taught by Grandma, and Grandma's are even better." "But no." Sasori shook his head and fell silent again. Seeing Sasori like this, Chiyo knew her persuasion was useless. She sighed inwardly, looked up at Uzumaki-jun. It was all his fault. If he hadn't come, Sasori wouldn't be like this. So, puppet technique, manipulation, human body conjuring. Since Sasori is alright, as long as he saves Sasori, as for what happens afterward, we'll deal with that later. Just as Chiyo was about to launch an attack, "Don't do it!" Uzumaki-jun quickly shouted, "Sasori's parents aren't dead yet. He should explain things clearly. Otherwise, what if he beats up Chiyo's mother later?" Uchiha Fugaku. Jiraiya looked at the remote mountain in the land of whirlpools with complicated eyes and said, "What are you doing here?" He hadn't expected that the policeman that Brat brought was actually the young head of the Uchiha clan. But, wasn't the Uchiha clan wiped out? Why is he in the land of whirlpools? Suddenly, Jiraiya felt a conspiracy shrouding Konoha in his heart. "Lord Jiraiya." Uchiha Fugaku's eyes changed slightly as he said, "It's been a long time." Finally, looking at the police badge pinned to his chest, he sighed inwardly. He couldn't betray the uniform he was wearing. Moreover, he was now the head of the Uchiha clan, and couldn't act rashly, especially since he had promised his father not to seek revenge. Although the hatred in his heart wasn't so easily erased, but Fugaku Uchiha's eyes were filled with hatred as he murmured, "Konoha." He would eventually settle accounts with the Hokage of Konoha for the lives of the entire Uchiha clan. The Uchiha clan. Jiraiya saw Fugaku Uchiha's expression, paused for a moment, and said, "Is it just you left?" As the old man's disciple, he knew some things. The Uchiha clan could be said to have sacrificed themselves for Konoha. How? Fugaku Uchiha chuckled coldly, saying, "Although I'm sorry to have let down the hero title Konoha bestowed upon my father, the Uchiha clan still has a dozen or so members left. I see. Jiraiya sighed inwardly, looking at Fugaku Uchiha, hesitating for a moment before saying, are you going back to Konoha? Fugaku Uchiha narrowed his eyes, then, with a mocking smile, said, sorry, I am now. He looked at Jiraiya calmly. An outstanding police officer of the land of whirlpools. A police officer? Hearing Fugaku's words, Jiraiya knew his decision. After a moment of contemplation, he sighed, I won't tell the old man about the Uchiha clan. Since the Uchiha clan had already joined the land of whirlpools, he would pretend he hadn't seen anything. Otherwise, according to what the village's higher-ups thought, they certainly wouldn't care whether you sacrificed yourself for the village or not. They would directly demand that the land of whirlpools return Konoha's bloodline limit. If they didn't, then, war. The war was over, and he didn't want to see another war. Fugaku paused for a moment upon hearing Jiraiya's words, then said expressionlessly, whatever. The Uchiha are not afraid of any assassination attempts. The land of whirlpools is not afraid of any war. When the land of whirlpools allowed them to use the Uchiha surname, he knew war was inevitable. Also, Fugaku said calmly, the land of whirlpools is a place ruled by law. I hope you will abide by the law here. If I find you have violated any of the laws of the land of whirlpools, I will definitely arrest you. Then, he turned to leave. As for deceiving a child, it doesn't constitute a crime, and he had no right to detain Jiraiya. However, wait a minute. Seeing Fugaku about to leave, Jiraiya rubbed his hands and called out apologetically, Is there anything else? Fugaku asked, frowning. I'm on duty right now. Jiraiya ignored Fugaku's expressionless face. After all, he was already used to it in Konoha. Approaching Fugaku with a shameless grin, Jiraiya said apologetically, since we're from the same village, could you? Sorry, I'm from the land of whirlpools now, Fugaku said expressionlessly, not Konoha. That was before, Jiraiya chuckled, so, could you lend me some money? Don't worry, Chiro said, hugging the anxious Hiko, Scorpion will definitely be alright. Although she said that, Chiro was still very worried. Why hadn't he returned after so long? Uzumaki-jun knew space-time ninjutsu. Could something have happened to him? Otherwise, why would he be back so late? I hope nothing bad has happened. Sasori, Daddy, Before Chiro could finish her thought, a spatial distortion suddenly appeared before her. Two figures and a small figure appeared in front of her. Scorpion. Seeing the small figure, Kyanlo and Zizi could no longer hold back their tears. They rushed forward and hugged Scorpion tightly, murmuring through their tears, it's Daddy and Mommy who are sorry. We're sorry. However, Daddy, Mommy. Seeing his father and mother hugging him, the somber expression on Scorpion's face instantly vanished, replaced by a smile as he hugged them tightly. He liked this feeling. He liked it very much. So, Daddy, Mommy, Scorpion whispered with his eyes closed, don't leave Scorpion, okay? You promised Scorpion. You teach me how to make puppets. If this is a dream, let him stay here a little longer. Chapter 3, I'll post a chapter recommendation later. I took a sip of goji berry water, rubbed my waist, and said, first time making a deal, I don't know the rules, please don't mind. Chapter 279 The Ninja's Methods. Life is always full of drama. Jiraiya originally thought that with the funds he had accumulated over the years from mission bounties, job salaries, and war spoils, he would surely be able to travel the ninja world slowly, searching for the chosen one. But he never expected he would be penniless on his very first day in the land of whirlpools. And, aside from a slightly aching kidney, he gained nothing. Jiraiya wondered if he had misheard Tsunade's description of the land of whirlpools because he had been secretly peeking around. Otherwise, besides the description of its simplicity, warmth, and hospitality, and its apparent poverty, why hadn't he seen any of that? Moreover, the land of whirlpools was clearly very wealthy, even imbued with a sense of mystery. Some things there weren't even found in Konoha. How could it be poor? Tsunade, she didn't get a single thing right. And, she wouldn't even lend him 10,000 taels of silver. It seems the young Uchiha clan leader has become stingy in the land of whirlpools. So, Jiraiya rubbed his stomach and muttered, I should go find something to eat. Last night, because he had no money, he had to sleep on the street. Surprisingly, the security in the land of whirlpools was quite good, no thieves bothered him all night. This disappointed Jiraiya somewhat. He had originally planned to steal from someone, but this morning, if he hadn't been hungry, he probably could have slept until the afternoon. I don't want to go back to Mount Myaboku to eat bugs, Jiraiya said with a sigh. And the matter with Gamabunta and Gamabunta, going back now would definitely get him a beating. This land of whirlpools is really something. Why do they need injections for summoning beasts? Jiraiya shook his head. He decided to go find something to eat. He figured he could hunt some game in the wild. As for leaving, he wouldn't leave until he figured out what was going on in the land of whirlpools. If it posed a threat to Konoha, he would quickly write a letter to the old man, and he also had an important mission to complete. That was, to take the youngest Kage to Mount Myaboku. As for gathering materials, it was just a side thing. Good morning. Uzumaki soon stretched and looked at Chiyo in front of him, smiling as he said, "You must have had a good night." Chiyo gave Uzumaki soon a complicated look. She had talked to Chiro last night, and it was indeed this red-haired brat in front of her who had saved her son, but this brat had also caused trouble for Tsunagakure. If it weren't for the strange traces found at the place where Chiro and Hiko died, coupled with the inexplicable rumors of the Konoha White Fang dismemberment case, she wouldn't have gone to such lengths. However, if it weren't for this brat in front of her, Chiro and Hiko would indeed have died, so no matter what, she was very grateful to him. It's just, his actions were a bit unpleasant. Although I am very grateful to you, Chiyo said, frowning, but what exactly do you want to do? As a former advisor to Tsunagakure, perhaps Tsunagakure had wronged her in some ways, but she still wanted to know whether this daimyo of the land of whirlpools posed any threat to Tsunagakure. If so, no matter what, she would take Chiro and Sasori away. Sigh. Hearing Chiyo's words, Uzumaki-jun gazed intently at the sun, its warm rays just beginning to fall upon the sky, and said with a slight upturn of his lips, I want to bring peace to this ninja world filled with despair. Bring hope. He was used to it now. As long as someone asked him, he could just say it was for the peace of the ninja world, and who knew, there might be unexpected gains. After all, this ninja world has never lacked like-minded people. It's just that everyone uses different methods. HMPH. Chiyo snorted disdainfully, saying, what a naive idea. Wasn't the first Hokage just as naive back then? And what happened in the end? After he died, the ninja world descended into chaos. But Chiyo's face suddenly broke into a smile, and she said, perhaps you can do it? Yesterday, she had heard Chiro talk about the changes in the land of whirlpools, the current situation, the laws, the relationship between ninjas and civilians. This method might really be able to change the ninja world? The ninja world has never lacked people full of hope for the future. She was getting old, but Chiro, Sasori, perhaps she could see them in the future. I'll handle Sasori's matter, Chiyo said with a sigh, watching the people of Uzumaki gradually leaving for work. Chiro. I won't tell the Sans village either. Just as he said. He was already dead back then. So, it's alright this way. Chiyo's lips curled slightly upward, bathed in the warm morning light. Perhaps she loved the Sand village, but she was also a mother and a grandmother. Deep down, she still hoped that Sasori and the others could live peaceful lives. Since Chiro didn't want to go back, didn't want to be a ninja, then so be it. This was fine too. At least she wouldn't have to experience the pain of losing a child again. Send me away, Chiyo said with a smile. If it's any later, Ebizo will definitely find out I'm not here. As a mother, she was already content to see that Chiro and the others were alright. Besides, it would be troublesome if she went back too late and Ebizo found out. After all, she had come secretly. If she was missing for too long, the village's higher-ups would definitely find out. Shouldn't you tell Chiro and the others? Uzumaki soon asked. It's still early. He hadn't even had breakfast yet. No. Chiyo shook her head and said, the father and son were making puppets until very late last night, so they probably won't wake up so soon. I'd better go back first. I see, alright then. Uzumaki soon thought for a moment, then took out a specially made kunai from his pocket and said, if you need to see them, just input your chakra. It wouldn't be a problem anyway. He had secretly made a hand seal in that dilapidated wooden house last night. As long as he activated it, he could go over, and it wouldn't be too late to come back for breakfast. Looking at the kunai that Uzumaki soon handed her, Chiyo was stunned for a moment, then smiled and said, thank you. As expected. This daimyo of the land of whirlpools is really a bit naive. Tisk tisk. Jiraiya looked at the brick wall in front of him, stroked his chin, and muttered, "This is the way, isn't it?" He had originally planned to find something to eat, but, while passing through a street, he suddenly discovered a hot spring, especially with the young ladies going in and out of the entrance. Jiraiya figured that as a ninja, going hungry for a few days was no big deal. He could treat it as training. Besides, since he was very young, he had had a dream to become a famous rider in the ninja world, but he was ultimately delayed by becoming a ninja. However, he had never forgotten his deepest dream. Once he saw material, the rider's soul within him would ignite. So, to realize his dream, he'd better find something to eat later. This wall. Jiraiya looked at the thick wall in front of him with a frustrated expression, muttering, "How come there's not a single crack? How was he supposed to gather material like this?" And Jiraiya slowly brought his ear closer to the wall. He couldn't hear anything. He sighed inwardly. It seemed he would have to use some ninja techniques. Then, chakra slowly emanated from his hand, gently touching the wall. "What are you doing?" Suddenly, a voice came from behind, startling Jiraiya. He whirled around, looking behind him. A familiar, annoying, and unwanted red-haired brat was squinting at him. Chapter 1. Can I postpone Chapter 280? Jiraiya's face was all smiles, but he had something on his mind he didn't know whether to say or not. Why do I always run into this red-haired brat? What kind of karma have I created? Kid, if I said I was testing how sturdy the wall is, would you believe me? Jiraiya smiled, leaned over, and squinted, saying, "Believe me, this sage isn't that kind of person." "Although I'd like to believe you," Nagato nodded, "but I doubt the police would." "The police?" Jiraiya looked at Nagato warily, threateningly saying, "Are you sure you want to call the police?" If he remembered correctly, peeping was illegal. But would the police believe you? Jiraiya glanced at the spot where he had just poked a hole, finding no damage whatsoever, and breathed a sigh of relief, saying cheerfully, "I'm one of the legendary Sannin of Konoha, the Toad Sage of Mount Myaboku, the dream of countless girls in the ninja world. Who do you think the police would believe? This wall is pretty sturdy. That attack didn't even cause a scratch. Although what you said is incredibly shameless," Nagato nodded, stroking his chin, and said, "But that wall has a barrier. Any attack will send an alarm to the police station." And Nagato pointed to a crystal cube hidden very discreetly in a tree not far away. "That thing is called a camera. The police at the station can see what's happening here through it." So, Nagato sighed, shook his head, and said, "I advise you to turn yourself in." He looked at Jiraiya with a "don't make another mistake" expression. Damn it. Upon hearing Nagato's words, Jiraiya's face froze, especially looking at the crystal cube. Why did this thing feel so familiar? Then, he grabbed Nagato and ran off into the distance. He'd better get out of there quickly. Meanwhile, Officer Fugaku, respond. Uchiha Fugaku frowned, took the walkie-talkie from his waist, and said, received here. Then, at the East Street Hot Spring Hotel, a perverted man has been spotted trying to peep. Please arrest him immediately. Appears to be in his early 20s, with red stripes painted on his face. Long white spiky hair, wearing a red vest, and carrying a large scroll on his back. His smile is somewhat lewd. Understood. Uchiha Fugaku frowned after hearing the description and said, "I will arrest the peeper immediately." Why does this seem familiar? Could it be? Fugaku Uchiha narrowed his eyes, then immediately regained his poker face, saying calmly, "Jiraiya. Kid." Jiraiya squatted down, looking at Nagato with a serious expression, and said, "I was just testing the sturdiness of the wall. I didn't mean anything else. Why did they even need a barrier for a wall? Did the Land of Whirlpools not allow him, the great author, to gather material? A masterpiece of the ninja world was ruined by them." Jiraiya felt his original train of thought vanish. He couldn't remember anything. He was so close to his dream, but now, it was all destroyed by the Land of Whirlpools. "Do you think?" Nagato gave Jiraiya a disdainful look and said, "Do you think I'd believe that?" He had just gotten up to exercise in the morning and planned to visit a hot spring. How did he end up like this? No. Jiraiya squinted at Nagato, gripping Nagato's shoulders tightly, and said, "You'll believe me. You'll explain to the officer later that I didn't spy. Otherwise, I'll beat you up." This brat, Believe it or not. Nagato's mouth dropped open, staring at Jiraiya in disbelief. This old man, threatening a child, how shameless. Uncle, Nagato said helplessly, with solid evidence, there's no use in arguing. Listen to me, just turn yourself in. Try to confess and get leniency. Come out in 18 years, and you'll be a hero again. 18 years. Jiraiya exclaimed in shock upon hearing Nagato's words, I haven't done anything yet, and I'm going to be locked up for 18 years? No, you only attempted spying, Nagato said seriously, you already tried, but you just didn't succeed. So it wasn't successful? How could it be locked up for so long? Should I run away? Jiraiya narrowed his eyes. There was no way he'd be in prison for 18 years. The ninja world was waiting for him to find the chosen one. However, of course, Nagato spread his hands, 18 years is just my guess. Jiraiya wondered if he should slap this wretched brat in front of him. Don't you know anything? He took a deep breath, flashed what he thought was a friendly smile, and said, so, how long do you think he'll be imprisoned? This. Nagato frowned slightly, pondered for a moment, and said, it will probably take. Before he could finish. 3 months imprisonment, suspended for 1 year. A deep voice came. Fugaku Uchiha instantly appeared in front of Jiraiya and said calmly, I just warned you yesterday, and you've already broken the law today? Officer, Nagato quickly shook off Jiraiya's hands and said righteously to Fugaku, I want to report this white-haired pervert. He was trying to peep. You. Jiraiya was so angry he almost choked. He quickly took a deep breath to calm himself and said, Fugaku, Shut up, Fugaku said calmly. Come with me. Then, looking at Nagato, he said, you'll come too. As a witness, you'll need to give a statement. I guarantee I'll complete the mission, Nagato said proudly. However, hearing that he had to go to the police station again, Jiraiya was definitely reluctant. He didn't have the money to pay the fine. And, what about 3 months or a year? He didn't understand. Just as he was about to sneak away. I advise you not to run away. Fugaku Uchiha looked at Jiraiya and said calmly, if you run away, the punishment will be more severe. As long as you abide by the law and behave yourself, your original sentence will not be carried out after 1 year. You won't have to stay in prison. No. Upon hearing Fugaku Uchiha's words, Jiraiya quickly stood up and said, I won't go to jail. If you don't commit another offense within a year, you won't have to, Fugaku Uchiha said, but if you do commit another offense, you will really have to go to jail. What about the fine? Jiraiya rubbed his hands, approached Fugaku Uchiha with a shy face, and said, do I need to? Not much. Fugaku Uchiha said expressionlessly, 5,000 taels of silver. Upon hearing Fugaku Uchiha's words, Jiraiya's face stiffened. He was penniless. Jiraiya sighed, looked at Fugaku Uchiha, and said cautiously, Can I pay you back? The Toad Sage has no money. Chapter 2, that's all. Chapter 281 He had no choice but to sell chakra for money. A man in his 30s, with red hair, a thick red beard, and the headband of Iwagakure, Hidden Stone Village, gazed at the sea before him. That must be the land of whirlpools, Old Purple murmured. How did that reputation spread like wildfire? He was incredibly curious. Everyone on the battlefield knew that Konoha had been badly wronged by the land of whirlpools in the early stages, and in the end, for the sake of the village's stability, they had no choice but to push the Uchiha clan forward. But for some reason, the land of whirlpool's reputation for benevolence still circulated throughout the ninja world. It hadn't disappeared even now. And, the Anbu's investigation had yielded nothing. It seemed these rumors appeared out of nowhere. Therefore, Old Purple was quite curious about all of this. He wanted to know how the land of whirlpools had managed to spread its good name throughout the ninja world. He had fallen out with a third Tsuchikage shortly after the war ended and was now wandering the ninja world alone. Let's go take a look, Old Purple sighed inwardly. Hopefully the third Tsuchikage won't regret it. And the Four Tails. Old Purple murmured, head bowed, seemingly looking at the seal beneath a canopy. I should really start training seriously. During this ninja world experience, he needed to learn to control the Four Tails and the corresponding ninjutsu. That way, at least in the future, he could be of help to the ninja village. How hypocritical. Suddenly, a disdainful voice echoed in Old Purple's mind. You humans are so hypocritical. Then, he fell silent again. Old Purple shook his head, saying nothing, looking at the obscure island opposite. How should he get there? Just as Old Purple was pondering whether to cross by water or swim, a ship was sailing from the land of whirlpools towards the border of the land of fire. Old Purple frowned and walked towards the direction the ship was sailing, first to see if it really came from the land of whirlpools. Are you really one of the legendary Sannin of Konoha? Nagato looked at Jiraiya with disdain and said, although I've never met a legendary Sannin, I've heard from people from other places that they are all talented, eloquent, and incredibly strong, while you, just a poor wretch. Hearing Nagato's words, Jiraiya's face froze, and he said angrily to Nagato, it's all because of you. You're fined for everything you do. At this rate, even the Toad Sage couldn't handle it. Oh. Nagato nodded knowingly and said, so you're ignorant of the law. What a despicable brat. He had to be careful this year. After all, if something went wrong, he would really go to jail and would never be able to gather intelligence on the land of whirlpools again. So, do you know where I can get money? Jiraiya stroked his chin, looking at Nagato. Legal, of course. Illegal, could easily lead to trouble, and Jiraiya seriously suspected that Fugaku Uchiha was watching him from behind, waiting for him to get into trouble so he could take revenge. After all, he was, the old man's apprentice. Legal? Nagato pondered for a moment, then said, there are many ways to make money in the land of whirlpools. Bricklaying, logging, glass making, tailoring, fishing, teaching. These jobs all pay wages. Nagato glanced at Jiraiya and said, although I can't tell how strong you are, you should be a ninja. Ninjas also receive subsidies. So many? Jiraiya stroked his chin after hearing Nagato's words, muttering. Aren't ninjas supposed to do missions? How could they do this kind of work? This is the new era of communism, Nagato said disdainfully, looking at Jiraiya. If ordinary people can do it, why can't ninjas? You need to change your old ways of thinking. Nagato shook his head and sighed. Otherwise, you'll easily get into trouble here. This brat. Jiraiya looked at Nagato speechlessly. Are all the Uzumaki clan members so confident? However, Jiraiya felt that since he was going to gather intelligence here, he really needed to familiarize himself with the laws of the land of whirlpools. Otherwise, constantly causing problems wouldn't work. He, the Toad Sage, also had his pride. If he got caught and went to jail again, as one of the legendary Sannin of Konoha, the Toad Sage, the dream of countless girls in the ninja world, he would definitely disappoint his fans. So, is there a quick way to make money? Jiraiya rubbed his hands, saying apologetically, this sage doesn't have that much time to work. You. Hearing Jiraiya's words, Nagato sighed in disappointment. Our teacher taught us not to be overly ambitious or to cheat. Only by being down-to-earth, realistic, upholding the fundamentals, and being practical, can we have a future. Now Nagato was even more suspicious. Was this long-haired, spiky-haired man really one of the three legendary Sannin of Konoha? He looked more like a con man. Of course. Nagato thought for a moment and decided to say, there are legal and quick ways to make money. Jiraiya, who was about to be disappointed, widened his eyes upon hearing Nagato's words and exclaimed excitedly, where? There really was such a method? That is. Nagato glanced at Jiraiya, narrowed his eyes, and said, sell chakra. Let this conman make money first. Otherwise, wouldn't he be unable to repay the 5,000 taels of silver he just lent him? That was his savings accumulated over many years. If it weren't for this conman claiming to be the Toad Sage, one of the legendary Sannin of Konoha, someone who had beaten up a demigod of the ninja world and kicked the Hokage, and now in trouble and needed his help, offering 5,000 taels of silver and promising to teach him an unparalleled ninjutsu after they left. Nagato would never have lent him the money. But now it seemed, he'd probably run into a con man. On the ship. Dear passengers, welcome aboard this voyage. This journey will take 3 hours. We wish you a pleasant trip. Old Purple looked curiously at a large box beside him. The voice had come from there. This is really interesting. Old Purple stroked his chin and murmured, it seems this trip to the land of whirlpools will be quite interesting. He hadn't put away his headband when boarding the ship. It was peacetime now. Unless you cause trouble in someone else's country or ninja village, no one would come to arrest you. Of course, his Jinchuriki identity had to be kept hidden. He glanced at the several ninjas beside him, also wearing headbands. Some were from other ninja villages, others were rogue ninjas. It seemed they were also heading to the land of whirlpools. A seat on the ship wasn't expensive, only 1,000 taels of silver for a regular seat. Of course, the cabins in the back were more expensive, costing tens or even hundreds of thousands of taels. As a wandering traveler, Lao Zi felt he didn't need to waste so much money. "Hey, brother," Lao Zi asked, looking at the family of 3 sitting next to him. "Are you citizens of the land of whirlpools?" He had noticed when boarding that although there were ninjas on board, most were ordinary civilians. However, in this era, unless you had the money to hire ninjas for protection, ordinary people wouldn't wander around. What were these ordinary civilians going to do? Us? A man in his 30s was startled to see the ninja beside him talking to him. He shook his head and said cautiously, We're not, ninja. We're just from a poor village near the land of fire. A relative in the land of whirlpools invited us to go. I heard there are jobs there, with wages. As long as you work hard and endure hardship, having enough to eat and wear won't be a problem. You can even eat meat once a day." The middle-aged man swallowed hard, patting his children beside him. Although they hadn't died needlessly in the war, hunger and cold still clung to them, whether in peace or war. So, if the land of whirlpools were really as his relative described, how wonderful that would be. "I see." Old Purple frowned upon hearing the middle-aged man's words, muttering to himself, "This land of whirlpools. What do they want to do? They're recruiting so many civilians, is it really just to give them work? Enough to eat and wear? This isn't the ninja world. Why do ninjas wage war? Isn't it all about more land, resources, and food? Has the land of whirlpools become so wealthy?" Old Purple was filled with doubt. He wanted to see just how this impoverished country had become. Chapter 1. Chapter 282. Are you feeling a little weak? Jiraiya, pale-faced and clutching a milk bottle, staggered out, leaning against the wall. "How much did you sell?" Nagato asked, shocked by Jiraiya's appearance. "Why are you so weak all of a sudden?" If he remembered correctly, there were requirements for selling chakra. Selling just a few trillion chakra wouldn't pose a danger to the body. But, this con man, he seemed weak. Could he be a genin who couldn't handle selling a few trillion chakra? Nagato looked at Jiraiya with disdain. After all, although he was young, he was a chakra-selling enthusiast in the land of whirlpools. He had so much chakra within him, rather than waste it, he sold it, earning money and contributing to the country. So, Nagato had given up hope. He just hoped this conman would return the money. As for the rest, he'd better ask his older brother, Jun. Haha. Jiraiya, hands on his hips, laughed loudly, his face pale. Not much at all. That little bit of chakra is nothing to me, the toad sage. He was just a little weak after drawing it all out. Jiraiya patted his now thicker wallet, feeling instantly relieved. Looks like this toad sage has money for materials again. Then, he twisted open the milk the chakra center had given him and drank it all in one gulp. He needed to replenish his strength. "Since you have money now," Nagato said disdainfully, looking at Jiraiya drinking milk, "shouldn't you give me back my 5,000 taels? Otherwise, I'll tell the police, you know." Haha. Jiraiya casually tossed the milk bottle into the nearby trash can, chuckling, "No rush. Let me take you to train first. You know, this is a training method passed down from the god of shinobi. 5,000 taels of silver isn't expensive. Want money? It's a dream come true. Once it's in my toad sage's pocket, there's no going back. Consider it an investment in my future masterpiece." Jiraiya patted Nagato's shoulder, narrowed his eyes, and smiled, saying, "This is a rare opportunity. Now, let me pass on this 1,000-year-old cultivation method to you. Don't be too touched." If I remember correctly, Nagato frowned slightly. The god of shinobi shouldn't have lived for 1,000 years, right? Then, he looked up, suspiciously staring at Jiraiya. "You don't mean you don't want to pay me back, do you? There are quite a few foreigners in the land of whirlpools these days." Uzumaki-jun stroked his chin, looked at the documents in his hand, sighed, and said, "It seems the land reclamation task has to be brought forward. Although because he set housing purchase conditions, people without land of whirlpool citizenship cannot buy houses in the land of whirlpools, so housing prices won't fluctuate too much. As more migrant workers flock to the land of whirlpools, the demand for rental housing is gradually increasing. Although he's already asked his father to build more high-rises, this is a necessary step in the urbanization process. Most future housing will be high-rises, which will increase housing supply to some extent, but once the population grows, no matter how tall the buildings get, the average living space per person will gradually decrease. After all, humans still need sufficient living space. I wonder how Chiro's research is going? Uzumaki soon put down the documents in his hand and murmured, hopefully he can catch up. Because Sasori was visiting these past few days, he gave Chiro and his wife a few days off to spend time with him. After all, he needed a psychologically healthy, complete Sasori, not just an artist. He also told Chiro, don't teach puppetry, it's a dead end. Men should play with Gundams. However, they still don't know what Gundam is. Looks like we'll have to redeem the Gundam anime later. Uzumaki-jun sighed. It's time to slowly start adding some entertainment. The Land of Whirlpools currently offers very little entertainment. Basically, everyone spends their evenings either eating ramen, going to barbecue and drinking, or going home to have babies. While this is beneficial for increasing the local population, it's not good in the long run. Therefore, some entertainment is necessary, not only to enrich the people's spirits but also to reduce social conflicts. After all, everyone has something to do, so they won't be thinking about other things. Moreover, the constant work, having babies, and the resulting stress can easily lead to mental health issues. At the same time, with the increasing population, the chakra extracted from the Land of Whirlpools is now in short supply, unable to meet the daily needs of the people. Therefore, he also established a chakra extraction center, aiming to allow some foreign ninjas to also participate in chakra extraction. Currently, the Land of Whirlpools still hasn't found a way to extract chakra from the environment. Therefore, the only way to obtain chakra now is through ninjas, and this method only works if the individual agrees. We must thoroughly check all newcomers, said Uzumaki-jun, looking at Uzumaki Hibiki. We must ensure the stability of the country. I've already made the arrangements, Uzumaki Hibiki nodded, but Chief Miyagi said that the police force is severely insufficient, and asked you if we can recruit more officers? Is that so? Uzumaki-jun frowned, pondered for a moment upon hearing Hibiki's words, and said, sure, let Chief Miyagi handle it. But remember, the political vetting must be strict. With the increasing population of the Land of Whirlpools, the existing police force is indeed insufficient. However, no matter what, the police station is an administrative body of the Land of Whirlpools, so recruitment must be done carefully, otherwise, what if they recruit ninjas from other villages? I'll tell Chief Miyagi. Hibiki Uzumaki nodded and said, I absolutely won't let any suspicious people in. We have arrived at our final destination, the Land of Whirlpools. Passengers, please disembark in an orderly manner, be careful, and avoid crowding and trampling. Please also keep your valuables with you. Finally, I wish you all a pleasant journey. Have we arrived? Roshi opened his eyes and murmured, according to what the crew members said on the ship, we'll need to get an entry permit to disembark later. What a strange thing. He'd traveled to so many countries and never heard of such a thing. Roshi stood up, grabbed his bag, and disembarked. Seeing the long queue, he followed the crowd and waited patiently. As a ninja, some rules must be followed. After the people in front of him finished, it wasn't long before it was Roshi's turn. Seeing that the Land of Whirlpools hadn't arrested any ninjas from other villages, Roshi approached. Name? The Whirlpool ninja, sitting in a chair, scribbling on a document on the table, asked casually. Roshi replied. Age. Gender. After asking for some basic information, the Whirlpool ninja looked up at Roshi, paused, then frowned and said calmly, a ninja from Iwagakure. The Four Tails Jinchuuriki. Chapter 2, Why am I updating so early today? Because I didn't have much to do today, so I updated. Also, I need to mention that tomorrow morning I have my graduation physical exam, and in the evening I have a lecture on graduation project format. So, if I'm free at noon, I should be able to write around noon tomorrow. The day after tomorrow, I need to take graduation photos, the situation is unclear. And, only 2 chapters today. Chapter 283 We don't discriminate against Jinchuuriki. Don't be nervous. Seeing that old purple tensed up and formed hand seals, ready to attack, the Uzumaki ninja smiled and said, we don't discriminate against Jinchuuriki here. This needed to be made clear, lest they drive someone crazy and cause trouble. After all, tailed beasts and Jinchuuriki had a terrible reputation in the ninja world. Both ninjas and civilians feared them greatly. But, the Land of Whirlpools needed this kind of talent. You know, Tailed beasts have enormous amounts of chakra. The Uzumaki ninja took out a document, handed it over, and smiled, saying, "It's just that ninjas who own summoning beasts and tailed beasts will have a bit more trouble. You'll need to get an extra permit. Take a look." Hearing the Uzumaki ninja's words, even though they hadn't made a move, Old Purple remained wary. He took the document from the ninja and examined it carefully. Regulations for pet ownership management in the land of Uzumaki. In order to beautify and purify the living environment of the land of Uzumaki, maintain public order in the community, prevent the spread of diseases, and protect the legitimate rights and interests of the citizens of the land of Uzumaki from infringement, these regulations are hereby established as follows. 1. Pet owners must comply with the regulations and obtain. 2. In summary, it basically means legally owning pets and obtaining permits, maintaining the environment by diligently cleaning up after them, seeking veterinary care when sick, and responsible pet ownership. And finally, if the legitimate rights and interests of the land of Uzumaki are infringed upon, the pet owner will bear full responsibility. Old Purple's lips twitched. Is owning summoning beasts and tailed beasts in the land of Uzumaki really that troublesome? And the Four Tails? This damn country. Goku saw the documents in Old Purple's hand and immediately said angrily, "Who's a pet? I am the Great Four Tails." Of course. Old Purple ignored him. To be honest, there were quite a few conditions here, but if only, they wouldn't discriminate against Jinchuriki. Where do I need to get these documents? Old Purple handed back the documents and looked at the Uzumaki ninja. Is it troublesome? Not troublesome at all. The Uzumaki ninja shook his head, revealing a comfortable smile, and said, "If it's a summoning beast, it might be a bit more troublesome. But since tailed beasts are aggregates of chakra, they don't need to be vaccinated. They just need to get the documents. Once you're inside, you can go to the pet hospital in the land of whirlpools to get them." The Uzumaki ninja handed over another document and said, "This is the traffic regulations and routes of the land of whirlpools. Please read it carefully before you go in. Otherwise, violating the laws and regulations of the land of whirlpools will be punished." Old Purple frowned as he took the document, and after glancing at it, he had a general understanding of it. The punishments generally fall into a few categories: fines, community service, imprisonment. Basically, that's all. Old Purple nodded, intending to hand it back. The Uzumaki ninja shook his head and smiled, saying, "These are for you, to help you familiarize yourself with the land of whirlpools and avoid any accidents." Alright, the data entry is now complete. The Uzumaki ninja tidied Old Purple's documents. "You can go in now." "Thank you." Hearing the Uzumaki ninja's words, Old Purple was taken aback, then nodded. Took the entry permit handed to him by the ninja, and walked towards the checkpoint. For some reason, he felt a strange feeling. Could it be that the Uzumaki ninja really wouldn't arrest him? After all, he had the Four Tails sealed within him. "Don't even think about it," Sun Wukong said again in Lao Zi's mind, bored. "There's no such person in the ninja world. The land of whirlpools is definitely just saying that to fool you." "Is that so?" Lao Zi's heart skipped a beat. He both longed for such a place in the ninja world and didn't believe it truly existed. He murmured, should Jinchuriki be discriminated against? However, before Lao Zi could even step inside, "By the way," a ninja from the whirlpool suddenly turned around and said with a smile, "You don't need to hide your Jinchuriki identity. As long as it's not illegal, the land of whirlpools doesn't discriminate against anyone. That includes Jinchuriki." After saying that, he turned back and continued registering the next person. This time he recruited a Jinchuriki. It should give him extra points when he gets his promotion. And, this year's year-end bonus is definitely guaranteed, and his boss might even give him a raise. Next, the Uzumaki ninja said with a smile to the people queuing in front of him, "Hurry up, don't dawdle. Don't you need one?" Old Purple lowered his head, a slight upturn at the corners of his mouth, and said, "Jinchuriki." If the land of whirlpools was really like this, Old Purple felt he really needed to take a serious look at the land of whirlpools. As for Son Goku, this time he didn't argue with Old Purple, but sighed softly. The Uzumaki ninja's words reminded him of what his father, the Sage of Six Paths, had said. As long as everyone understood and communicated with each other, the ninja world would surely achieve peace. But so many years had passed, yet true peace still hadn't been achieved. Humans are a group of selfish and desire-driven creatures. The tailed beasts had lived for so many years, witnessing countless wars started by humans for no reason. Sometimes it might be something ridiculous, and war would break out. And they The tailed beasts had always adhered to the Sage of Six Paths words, neither causing trouble nor making a scene, but humans still wanted to control them for power and for their own selfish desires. Originally, everything was quite good. Because the tailed beasts were very powerful, no one could capture them. Until, two overpowered individuals appeared in the ninja world, petting tailed beasts like they were petting house cats. In the end, they were all sealed away. Sealed in this small space. Perhaps, Sun Wukong murmured, then closed his eyes again. Was it real, or fake? It didn't know. Don't look so sad, Jiraiya patted Nagato's shoulder, smiling. It's not that I don't want to pay it back, it's just that children shouldn't carry so much money. As your teacher, for your healthy growth, I'll reluctantly keep it for you, and I'll return it to you when you grow up. However, Nagato's face froze, looking at Jiraiya with disdain, and said, who wants to become your teacher? Who would believe that? My mother said the same thing back then, but I never got the money back even once. Haha, Jiraiya laughed heartily, hands on his hips, happy now? After all, not everyone can become my teacher, the Toad Sage. This kid was so happy he was stunned. Nagato was about to say something when Jiraiya interrupted him. I know. You're too excited, but... Jiraiya patted Nagato's shoulder with a smile and said with a sigh, as a ninja, this won't do. Although it's truly unbelievable that I, the Toad Sage, took you as my disciple. But, a ninja must remain calm and composed no matter what happens, and not make a fuss. Your training isn't up to par yet. Jiraiya sighed and said, I don't blame you. After all, I'm just that excellent, that powerful, and that handsome, it's normal for you to be excited. Nagato decided not to talk to Jiraiya anymore. He could tell, such a narcissistic person, must be single. Therefore, Nagato decided it was best not to get too close to him. That $5,000, he didn't want it. Chapter 1. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 284. This is the basic ninjutsu of the Land of Whirlpools. Bus number 1? Old Purple muttered, looking at the map given to him by the Uzumaki ninja. I should catch the bus here. Although he didn't know what taking a bus meant, or why the Land of Whirlpools had so many strange things, he figured that since he was here, he could only try to get used to it. Especially on the way here, he'd seen some rule-breaking ninjas who thought their status as ninjas didn't require them to follow the rules of a small country, resulting in jaywalking. These were the street lights at every intersection in the Land of Whirlpools. According to the rules, you had to stop at red and go at green. If you didn't follow them, you'd be caught by the traffic police in green vests and made to assist them for half an hour. If you disobeyed and caused a disturbance, you'd be detained. So, even though there were many strange things here, Old Purple still followed the rules diligently. He didn't want to be arrested and go to jail. Looking at the orange-haired child also waiting for the bus, Lao Zi pondered for a moment, then walked over and asked, Excuse me, little friend. Are you waiting for the bus too? The orange-haired child looked up at the bearded man in front of him, nodded, and said, Hello, yes. Is this a stranger? Judging from his headband, he should be a ninja from Iwagakure. His father had been sick with a cold a few days ago, so he hadn't been able to train with Nagato and Konan. But today his father was better, so he arranged to train with Nagato. He was currently waiting for the bus, planning to go to the small forest where he used to train every day. Is there something you need? Yohiko asked, puzzled. Well, Lao Zi chuckled sheepishly, how do I get on this bus? Why can't I see anything here? Oh, you asked about that? Yohiko scratched his head and said, just wait here, the bus will be back soon. Which bus are you taking? Number 1, Old Purple said. I need to go to the veterinary hospital? Yohiko was taken aback by Old Purple's words and said, to get a license? For summoning a beast? I'm taking the same bus, perfect. Just follow me in line. Thank you very much, Old Purple said with a smile. As for whether it was a summoning beast or a tailed beast, he didn't say. Although the Uzumaki ninja had said there was no need to hide it, he still didn't want others to know. However, Yohiko scratched his head and said embarrassedly, could I see your summoning beast? He had never seen a summoning beast before. After all, There were very few ninjas in the land of whirlpools who possessed summoning beasts. So, he was very curious about how a summoning beast differed from Conan's paper doll. I'm sorry. But seeing the strange expression on Roshi's face, Yohiko knew he had gone too far and quickly said, I was just curious. If it's not possible. I'm sorry. Yohiko bowed. Roshi sighed, looking at Yohiko apologizing to him, a slight smile on his face. He suddenly really wanted to see whether this country was really as the Uzumaki ninja said. The child in front of him was perfect. If even children were disliked, how could this country possibly recognize tailed beasts and Jinchuriki? Perhaps that ninja had just deceived him. I don't have a summoning beast, Roshi said gently, but under Yohiko's disappointed gaze, I have a tailed beast sealed within me. Instantly, hearing Roshi's words, Yohiko's face froze. Just when Roshi thought he had scared him, really. Yohiko looked at Roshi in shock and excitement, saying, you have a tailed beast within you. This time, it was Roshi who was frightened. This kid in front of him didn't seem to be afraid. Looking at Yohiko's expression, Old Purple wondered if he was mistaken, but this kid seemed genuinely excited. Aren't you afraid of it? Old Purple frowned and said, you know, it's a tailed beast. Why should I be afraid of them? Yohiko scratched his head, puzzled. Our textbooks say, tailed beasts are intelligent beings. Since we can accept summoning beasts, why can't we accept tailed beasts? But tailed beasts can harm people. Old Purple sighed and said, they're too powerful. Just because they're powerful, we can't accept them? Yohiko looked at Old Purple with disdain and said, I read in the textbooks that tailed beasts don't harm people for no reason. It's just those despicable ninjas controlling them to do bad things. As long as you don't provoke them, they basically won't kill people. You know, the number of lives lost to ninjas each year is probably less than the number killed by tailed beasts. Yohiko stared at Old Purple with wide eyes, curious, and said, is your tailed beast the Nine Tails? Hearing Yohiko's words, Old Purple's heart trembled. Indeed. Most of the things those tailed beasts did were caused by ninjas. Since they can accept summon beasts, why can't they accept tailed beasts? Old Purple suddenly smiled and said, what's on my body isn't the Nine Tails. It's the Four Tails. Is that so? Yohiko lowered his head in disappointment upon hearing Old Purple's words, saying, isn't it the strongest Nine Tails? With so few tails, it must be very weak. Haha. Old Purple felt a sense of relief and laughed heartily. Although it's not the strongest Nine Tails, the Four Tails is still quite strong. He seemed to have never felt this way before. In his heart, he said to the Four Tails, I'm sorry. And the Four Tails snorted, childish. It hadn't expected that such a place actually existed in the ninja world. They were indeed right. The number of people the tailed beasts, had killed, wasn't even as many as the ninjas. It was truly unjust. They hadn't done anything, so why did the entire ninja world start thinking they were monsters? And imagine living in a grand villa facing the sea, where spring is always in the air, and then suddenly being shoved into a cage. Wouldn't you be furious? Wouldn't you be furious? Hearing someone speak up for them like this, Sun Wukong felt a strange unease. Perhaps, this country could truly realize the Sage of Six Paths ideals? And, the Four Tails said unhappily, we don't judge strength by the number of tails. These foolish humans. Haha. Old Purple chuckled, ignoring the Four Tails. If they suddenly viewed the tailed beasts so simply, then they weren't anything special. Perhaps, this trip really would allow them to see a different country? Unfortunately. Yohiko shook his head regretfully, saying, since they're tailed beasts, I won't be able to see them. He really wanted to see the tailed beasts. After all, there were only 9 in the entire ninja world. They were extremely rare creatures. And each one was incredibly powerful and handsome. It's just, he couldn't see the sealed tailed beasts. See that? Jiraiya said proudly, holding a Rasengan in his hand. This is a no-seal ninjutsu. There are very few people in the ninja world who know it. Only geniuses can learn it. Now, I'll pass this ninjutsu on to you. After watching Minato practice so many Rasengans, he slowly understood the principles and developed the ninjutsu himself. Moreover, he went even further, achieving a change in chakra form. Sure enough. This toad sage is a genius. Jiraiya laughed loudly, hands on his hips. It's an honor for you to become my disciple. However, before he could finish speaking, Jiraiya seemed to choke, looking at Nagato, who was also holding a Rasengan in his small hand. with disbelief. He said, You. Could you be the legendary genius who learns ninjutsu the moment he sees it? Was Jiraiya about to receive another genius? Sure enough. Heaven was still on his side. But, genius my foot. Nagato said irritably, this is a basic ninjutsu that can be learned at the affiliated Academy of the Land of Whirlpools. It's like the three-body technique, although it's a bit difficult to learn. But there are still a few fourth-year students who have learned it. But, this liar, where did he learn the ninjutsu created by his brother Jun? Should he tell Jun? He'd refrained from asking for trouble and stayed here, intending to see what this liar was capable of. But, he was a little disappointed. Nagato sighed and shook his head. Jiraiya stared blankly at Nagato. This ninjutsu, how did it become a basic ninjutsu? This is a ninjutsu without hand seals. This toad sage painstakingly stole, deduced this ninjutsu. And it's outdated? Chapter 2, that's all for today. Chapter 285 The Ninja World. Kirigakure, Hidden Mist Village. Mizuki Sai, resting her chin on her hands, looked at the Mizukage before her and asked, have you found out? Did those missing Kirigakure ninja and their families ultimately betray the village and join the Land of Whirlpools? Last time, Sujetsu Hazuki returned halfway, seemingly obeying the village's call, enduring countless hardships and difficulties to cross the sea and return. But he was supposed to prove his innocence and become Kirigakure's new hero, a role model, but unexpectedly, Sujetsu Hazuki and his relatives secretly disappeared. Keep in mind, the surrounding area was teeming with Anbu that night to prevent anyone from escaping, yet, they weren't discovered to be missing until the next morning. The ninja who infiltrated the Land of Whirlpools has sent back news. The Mizukage's assistant nodded, handing over the intelligence report, and said with a frown, the situation is quite different from what we expected. The Land of Whirlpools. The changes are too drastic. The Mizukage's assistant sighed with worry, saying, according to the spies, those mist ninja have indeed betrayed their villages and joined the Land of Whirlpools. But since our invasion of the Land of Whirlpools, in these short few years, the Land of Whirlpools has actually forged a unique path. A path of prosperity, democracy, civilization, and harmony. Unexpectedly, the Land of Whirlpools abolished the policy of ninja villages and changed the way ninjas live, yet it didn't seem to weaken at all. On the contrary, it became even stronger. Especially the news sent back by the spies. More and more rogue ninjas are heading to the Land of Whirlpools. The Land of Whirlpools. The Mizukage put down the intelligence report, narrowed his eyes, and said, when everyone's attention was focused on the Land of Rain, unexpectedly, a small island nation has risen instead. How laughable. If things continue like this, with so many rogue ninja joining the Land of Whirlpools, they'll definitely be killed. He'd sensed that red-haired brat was unusual back then, and it turned out he was. This new system, different from the one country one village system, was thriving. But, the Mizukage's lips curled into a playful smile as he murmured, recruiting rogue ninja. This was a cardinal sin in the ninja world. If only one rogue ninja from Kirigakure joined the Land of Whirlpools, perhaps the other villages wouldn't say anything, but, if all the rogue ninja from all the villages defected to the Land of Whirlpools. The Mizukage narrowed his eyes, a cold smile on his face. Now, Kirigakure only needed to wait, until the other villages received the news, and that would be the Land of Whirlpool's self-destruction. Besides, the war had only just ended, it wasn't suitable to start another war. Pay attention to the situation in the Land of Whirlpools, and news from other villages, the Mizukage said calmly. If you find anything amiss, report it immediately. The Land of Whirlpools, when it accepted rogue ninja from other villages, its fate was sealed. No ninja village would allow another village to recruit their rogue ninja. The Land of Whirlpools. The Four Tails? Uzumaki-jun murmured, looking at the intelligence report in his hand. I didn't expect that a Jinchuriki would actually come to the Land of Whirlpools. The pet breeding and management rules he established and the popularization of tailed beast knowledge in the academy were all designed to attract these Jinchuriki. After all, apart from Naruto Uzumaki, that idiot, a second-generation official whose family property was confiscated, and who, despite being scorned and beaten by the villagers, still firmly believed in the will of fire, there weren't many left. The rest of the Jinchuriki either received preferential treatment from their villages or defected. Therefore, these Jinchuriki could be recruited. Uzumaki-jun didn't need them to do anything, They just needed to work honestly in the land of whirlpools and sell chakra whenever they had free time. Obito's incomplete 10 tails told us that a complete tailed beast isn't necessary to synthesize the 10 tails. Uzumaki-jun narrowed his eyes, a slight smile playing on his lips, and said, I wonder if we can synthesize the 10 tails without the Gato-Mazo. If it succeeds, perhaps the land of whirlpools could produce several 10 tails mode masters, and then the ninja world, wouldn't it just be the land of whirlpools' backyard? After all, the land of whirlpools' goal is the stars and the sea. But this can't be done too deliberately. Uzumaki-jun stroked his chin, pondered for a moment, and said, looks like I need to promote the land of whirlpools' chakra center. This is a path to wealth, and he believes those rogue ninjas will definitely face difficulties. As long as a trace is left in their minds, they'll definitely think of this first when they need money. After all, this is the only simple, interest-free, and quick way to make money. He heard that Jiraiya has been living a comfortable life selling chakra these past few days. And, now that there's a Jinchuriki, land reclamation is only one step away, once Chira develops the equipment. Uzumaki soon stretched and stood up. It had been so long since he'd been to the academy, he should go see Madara. He'd heard that Chihiko and Nagato had ultimately lost and become Jiraiya's students. He wondered if they'd be able to learn Sage Mode this time. Uchiha Mikado looked at Madara, who was recuperating in seclusion, and sighed softly. So many years had passed. Madara had aged considerably. Although the academy had reduced his class hours to accommodate him, it was still too much work for him. Someone's here. Madara suddenly opened his eyes and said calmly. Go open the door. This was the dormitory the academy had assigned him. Toby wasn't here. So, it was basically his junior who took care of him. Creak. Good afternoon, Mikado. Uzumaki soon smiled as he looked at Uchiha Mikado, who opened the door for him. Where's Madara? Grandpa Madara is inside. Uchiha Mikado paused for a moment when she saw Uzumaki-soon, then opened the door and said gently, please come in. She bent down and took out a pair of spare shoes for Uzumaki-soon to change into. Uzumaki-soon didn't mind, casually put on the shoes, and went in, saying, thank you. If it weren't for his interference, Itachi would probably have been born in a few years, but now, Uchiha Fugaku has changed. The future is no longer the future he knew. Red-haired brat. When Uzumaki-soon entered the living room, Grandpa Madara said indifferently, what brings you here? Grandpa Madara. Uzumaki-soon didn't pay attention to Madara's tone, casually walked to the chair in front of Madara and sat down, smiling at Uchiha Mikado who brought him water. Thank you. Then, he took a sip and looked at Madara. Madara is really. Uzumaki-jun sighed. Getting older and older. If he hadn't interfered, Madara would have been swayed by Zetsu because of his inner desire for peace, ultimately becoming the enemy of the ninja world and dying regretfully in his best friend's arms. But now, he didn't know what Madara was thinking. Did he want to die peacefully like this, or go back to his cave and continue living with the help of the Gato-Mazo? But Obito was already born in the land of whirlpools and had acquired the citizenship of the land of whirlpools. In a few years, he should be coming to school. If he hadn't met Haruno-rin, he probably wouldn't have been able to become Madara's substitute. Of course, as a top cosplayer in the ninja world, a professional cross-dresser for over 10 years, he could reluctantly impersonate Madara. But he guessed that neither Madara nor Zetsu would agree. I know why you came to me at this time. Madara opened his half-closed eyes, looked intently at Uzumaki-jun, and said calmly, perfect timing. I also have something else I want to ask you. Chapter 1. Chapter 286 New Plans. Konoha. It's been so long. Hiruzen Sarutobi casually picked up his pipe, looked at Kaoru Utatane, and said, Tsunade still hasn't recovered? He had always believed that as his student, Tsunade would definitely pull through. The moment one becomes a ninja, everyone understands, death is the ninja's central theme. Whether it's oneself or others, no ninja can avoid it. His teacher, the second Hokage, embodied the will of fire, facing the enemy alone so that he, Danzo, and the other three could survive. Ultimately, the second Hokage, who made outstanding contributions to Konoha's forbidden techniques, was gone. The four of them were heartbroken. But thinking of Konoha, of the villagers, of the ideals left by the first Hokage, they persevered. Even facing the rejection of their clans and the indifference of the higher-ups, they didn't give up, because the will of fire sustained them. So in the end, They succeeded. Now, it can be said that the four of them hold all the power in Konoha. No clan or ninja dares to question their decisions. How difficult that period was. Now, he is the light of Konoha, Danzo is the darkness of Konoha, and with the help of his two companions, Kaoru Utatane and Hamura Mitagato, Konoha is growing strong, and in the future, it will definitely become the strongest ninja village. I went to see her a few days ago. Kaoru Utatane looked at the documents about the recent situation in Konoha without looking up, and said, although she seems to be much better. But, Kaoru Utatane sighed and closed the document. Her hemophobia has not been eliminated. I think she is no longer suitable to be a ninja. What kind of ninja is she if she is afraid of blood? I guess as soon as Tsunade's fist hits, the enemy coughs up blood, and she starts to be terrified, and then, she is at the mercy of others. That is too dangerous. This. Hirozen Sarutobi took a drag of his cigarette, frowned in thought, and said, what about the medical department? How about putting her in the medical department? It seemed a bit of a waste to let Tsunade retire from her ninja career like this. You know, the legendary Sannin of Konoha. Those three would definitely be able to support Konoha in the future. If it's surgery, that's fine, Kaoru Utatane nodded, but surgery itself might be a bit tricky. What if she faints halfway through surgery? That could be fatal. Aren't you worried about medical disputes? Sigh. Hirozen Sarutobi sighed, saying helplessly, in that case, let Tsunade become a medical instructor. Remember Tsunade's suggestion during the war? Assign a medical ninja to each squad. Hirozen Sarutobi took a drag of his cigarette and said, based on the last war report, if each squad had had a medical ninja, most of them could have survived. But then, Kaoru Utatane frowned, pondering for a moment after hearing Hirozen Sarutobi bring up the previous suggestion again, and said, wouldn't that affect the squad's strength? No. Hirozen Sarutobi stood up, shook his head, and said, it's just to teach them some first aid, so that they won't be helpless in dangerous situations. Hirozen Sarutobi gazed intently at Konoha outside the window. The war was over. The village had returned to its peaceful atmosphere. Calm, harmonious. But he knew, this peace would be broken sooner or later. No ninja village would watch Konoha develop peacefully. Therefore, Konoha needs to prepare early. The new generation will eventually step into the limelight, and he, the third Hokage, will also burn himself to light the way for future generations. Let's give it a try, Hirozen Sarutobi sighed. Failure isn't scary, what's scary is not even daring to try. Perhaps this could make Konoha stronger? In that case, Kaoru Utatane thought for a moment, nodded, and said, I'll go talk to Tsunade about it later. She didn't know what this change would bring to Konoha. But, what if it could really reduce casualties? Besides, there's no harm in trying. Konoha Year 40. More than 2 years have passed since the end of the war. So, each ninja village is slowly returning to its original rhythm of life. Especially in the 2 years after the end of the war, it was a peak period for births, during which the birth rate of each ninja village increased linearly. This injected vitality into the ninja villages that had suffered from the ravages of war. Old Purple, Hey called to the red-bearded ninja not far away, come here for a moment. It's Hey. Old Purple smiled and walked over, asking, what's up? He'd been in the land of whirlpools for over a year. Originally, he planned to wander the ninja world, slowly honing his skills, but unexpectedly, he'd ended up settling down in whirlpools, and, even obtaining citizenship. He was, after all, a ninja from Iwagakure. Although he had betrayed his village, he still loved Iwagakure. If only Iwagakure could become like the land of whirlpools, Old Purple murmured inwardly, sighing. Rule of law, if all ninjas could abide by the law, then perhaps communication between ninjas and civilians, between ninjas themselves, would truly be possible. Although he'd made a lot of fools and lost a lot of money these past few years because of the Jinchuriki issue, it was indeed as that Whirlpool ninja had said. The land of whirlpools didn't discriminate against anyone, whether they were Jinchuriki or anyone else. And, during this time, he'd even sold a lot of chakra to earn enough for a down payment. That's my house, Son Goku thought to himself, annoyed. You wretched human, you're selling my chakra. He didn't even put his name on the chakra register. How infuriating. Isn't my chakra enough? Old Purple said sheepishly. Besides, you wouldn't want to live in such a small house, would you? Houses these days are so big. 2-story concrete houses with a small garden next to them, so comfortable. I can't sense it, Son Goku said irritably. After get off work, you have to buy fruit candies, 100 banana flavor and 100 peach flavor. Hearing Son Goku's words, Old Purple's face froze. As a Jinchuriki, he had to eat all the candies for the Four Tails to sense them, but eating them like that would give him cavities. He was already getting old. If you don't eat, Sun Wukong threatened, I won't lend you chakra next time. You still have your mortgage to pay off. And there's the compensation for the neighboring village. Tisk tisk, Sun Wukong mocked, your salary alone isn't enough. It's all your fault, Old Purple said helplessly. If you hadn't gone berserk, how could you have broken into someone's house? Luckily no one was hurt, otherwise, we'd probably be spending the rest of our lives in prison. Don't blame the tailed beasts, Sun Wukong said disdainfully, it was clearly because you couldn't control my chakra that you went berserk. This kind of person is really, even the tailed beasts are wronged. Yes, Old Purple replied perfunctorily, then looked at Ping and said. Is there something you need? He was still working. If he didn't finish today, it would be delayed until tomorrow. Moreover, his team only had him as a ninja. If he ran away, it would slow down the project. As the team leader, he absolutely couldn't allow that to happen. As for the Four Tails, let's talk about it after get off work. Maybe he'll forget about it soon? Oh, it's nothing, Ping said with a smile. It's just that a notice was just issued that all team leaders need to attend a meeting in the conference room tomorrow morning. I asked you to inform you. I heard. The higher-ups are starting a new plan. Chapter 2, Nothing More. Chapter 287 Whoever he sees dies. Lord Danzo. Hatake Tsukumo looked at Shimura Danzo sitting across from him with a wry smile. He knew it was his turn to make a choice. As the rumors in the village about him abandoning the mission to prioritize saving his comrades grew stronger, he knew someone above was trying to get him. Otherwise, why hadn't anyone stood up for him after all the service he had given to the village, even after shedding blood? Even after he resigned his position as head of the Ambu and stayed home, the rumors about him hadn't subsided. So, someone was definitely pulling the strings behind the scenes. He didn't know why people above wanted to get him. He had even asked the Hokage to assure him that he had no ulterior motives and only wanted to protect Konoha. As for why he abandoned the mission to save his comrades last time, it was because he always remembered the will of fire and would never easily abandon his comrades. Besides, the mission wasn't important, abandoning it wouldn't affect the war's outcome. But, the Hokage sighed and said he understood and would have the Anbu investigate who was spreading the rumors. But, how come so much time has passed and nothing has changed? Lord Danzo, Hatake Tsukumo sighed, staring intently at him, and said calmly, I've already said I won't do anything to betray the village. Why won't you let me go? Actually, I'm completely baffled too. Danzo took a deep breath, picked up his teacup, took a sip, and then said, I know nothing about this. He wanted to become Hokage, and he wanted to eliminate anyone who stood in his way. But, this was clearly not his doing, okay? Before Hiruzen smeared his root organization, he was diligently contributing to the village. He didn't have time for that. And, if he really wanted to do that, how could he make it so obvious? Did they really think Root was some kind of outstanding youth organization that wouldn't even frame someone? However, Hatake Tsukumo looked at Danzo with disbelief, a bitter smile appearing on his face again, and said, I know this definitely wasn't done by Lord Danzo. Yes, right. His subordinates, the Anbu ninjas, had seen a group of masked ninjas spreading rumors, and in Konoha, besides the Anbu, only Root dressed like that. So, this time I just wanted to tell Lord Danzo. Hatake Tsukumo sighed, saying helplessly, I want to inform you that I love the village. Danzo's hand holding the teacup trembled slightly, then he put it down, slowly stood up, and said, It's getting late. The Hokage asked me to inform you. It's time for your judgment. Please come with me. He then turned and left. Danzo's face was gloomy. This blame, it seemed he, the Dark Knight, was destined to take the fall. But, this really wasn't him. Hiruzen. Danzo sighed, muttering, I am ultimately Root of Konoha. Hokage building. Hiruzen Sarutobi looked at Danzo emerging from the Hatake clan on the crystal ball, picked up his pipe from the table, took a drag, and said wistfully, Danzo. He didn't understand why his best friend had changed so much. You were the one who wanted to be the Dark One, you were the one who wanted to be the Root of Konoha, why did you suddenly change? For so many years, we've worked so well together. Now, Konoha is gradually thriving in our hands. Why can't you understand this now? Lately, because Danzo was dismissed as the root leader, some clans have started to disobey. Hiruzen Sarutobi sighed, stood up, put his hands behind his back, and looked out the window. Konoha. How harmonious and warm it was. He hadn't let his teacher down after all. So, he absolutely wouldn't allow anyone to destroy all of this. It's time to reinstate Danzo, Hiruzen Sarutobi murmured, otherwise, some things will always be inconvenient to do. He was the light of Konoha, Danzo was the darkness of Konoha. Konoha absolutely couldn't be without them both. Tsukumo's matter should be resolved now, Hiruzen Sarutobi sighed, speaking with a sigh. As long as he confessed, that was enough. The village wouldn't do anything to him. After all, he was a hero of Konoha. The land of whirlpools. Uzumaki-jun looked at the intelligence report sent down from below, sighed inwardly, and murmured, what a pity. It was impossible to win over Hatake Tsukumo. You could see from his self-destruction for the sake of Konoha's harmony, he loved the village. Just look at Kakashi's conversation with Hatake Tsukumo at the end, how deep that love was. I understand you, you did the right thing, you are my pride. That's right. In the end, Kakashi was still deeply influenced by the will of fire, believing that his father was right to save his comrades and then be forced to commit suicide by the village. Because his father saved the entire village. Therefore, Uzumaki-jun didn't try to contact such samurai families. He might be captured by Hatake Tsukumo and taken to the Hokage the moment he showed his face. Obito is graduating from the Uzumaki Academy. I wonder if Kakashi and Rin will end up together? Anyway, Obito seems to be having a good time helping old ladies cross the street in Uzumaki lately. He's almost on the list of the top 10 most touching figures in the land. Actually, being single is pretty good, Uzumaki-jun sighed inwardly, smiling helplessly. Otherwise, given Obito's his personality of destroying the world if his beloved woman dies is just too terrifying. Therefore, since its founding, Uzumaki has always placed great emphasis on the mental health development of minors. Psychologists conduct psychological tests for them every few days, especially for the Uchiha clan, once every semester. Otherwise, the Uchiha clan's willingness to sacrifice everything to protect the peace of the ninja world is just too much to handle. HMPH. Hearing an unpleasant voice, Uzumaki-jun looked up at the red-haired girl in front of him and said with a smile, you seem quite angry today. Who bullied you again? You. Kushina glared at Uzumaki-jun, her voice filled with resentment. It's you. Uzumaki-jun chuckled awkwardly, saying helplessly, sorry. He knew exactly what Kushina meant, because he was getting married. His bride wasn't Xiangzi, nor Nanao, nor this red-haired girl in front of him. During their last conversation, Madara had discussed the future of the Uchiha clan with him. They both knew that awakening the Sharingan required intense emotional fluctuations, and given the Land of Whirlpool's attitude towards ninjas, it would be very difficult for the Uchiha to awaken it. After all, the Land of Whirlpools had an army and didn't force ninjas to perform missions. Especially since the Uchiha clan had mental health classes every semester. So, Madara inquired about the Land of Whirlpool's future plans for the Uchiha clan. The Sharingan was a bloodline limit many desired, even if it couldn't be awakened, a bloodline limit was still a bloodline limit, and anything could happen. And a bloodline limit clan without powerful bloodlines was extremely dangerous. Although Uzumaki-jun's later decision was to integrate the Uchiha clan into the political and legal system and establish a court, it seemed the Uchiha's serious nature was a good fit, and their strong emotional fluctuations. He figured that after hundreds of melodramatic dramas, there wouldn't be many Uchiha who could awaken their main Jakkyou Sharingan. After all, good melodramas can resonate with people. But then, upon seeing Uchiha Mikado, Uzumaki-jun casually remarked, Mikado's future child will definitely awaken a main Jakkyou Sharingan. Then, Madara felt he had harassed his granddaughter, who was from countless generations ago, and wanted to beat him up. So, seeing the beautiful, blushing, and downcast Uchiha Mikado, and Madara secretly awakening his Rinnegan, just as Mikado gave a disappointed, bitter smile, and Madara was about to attack, for the sake of harmony in the Land of Whirlpools, he proposed to Uchiha Mikado. You see, everything he did was for the Land of Whirlpools. Anyway, seeing Madara's fleeting smile, Uzumaki-jun knew he was standing up for his granddaughter. He was probably sighing again. Hashirama, I won again. Chapter 1. Chapter 288 Heroes of Konoha. Don't be angry. Uzumaki soon stroked Kushina's head and said with a smile, He didn't know what to say. If he continued, he would become a jerk. This was supposed to be an uplifting novel, and he was supposed to be the savior bringing hope to the ninja world. So, a smile would suffice. Uzumaki soon did understand what Kushina and the others meant, but he could only apologize now. I hate you. Kushina had been looking at Ursunini expectantly, but he hadn't said anything and had fallen silent. She suddenly yelled angrily, then turned and left. Even though the two of them had grown up together, Uzumaki soon watched Kushina leave, sighed helplessly, rubbed his forehead, and didn't chase after her. He knew Xiangxi and Nanao were waiting for Kushina outside. What was the point of chasing after her now? He could only wait a few days. As expected, Uzumaki soon shook his head, sighed, and murmured, I'm still too outstanding. Konoha. Dad. Kakashi Hatake saw his father come to pick him up as usual, patted his classmate with a bowl-cut hair, thick eyebrows, and big eyes, wearing a green bodysuit, and ran straight to Tsukumo Hatake. Is he your friend? Tsukumo Hatake took Kakashi's hand and smiled. Have you been paying attention in class at the academy? Looking at Kakashi, a hint of reluctance flashed in his eyes. Then, Kakashi should be graduating soon. Tsukumo Hatake looked at the sunset and said with emotion, what do you want to be when you grow up? A ninja. Kakashi said expressionlessly, glancing at the fire-controlling sleeve on Tsukumo Hatake's right shoulder, like Dad, to become a great ninja. To protect Konoha. Great? Tsukumo Hatake touched his fire-controlling sleeve with a confused look, muttering, is it really like that? This was what he earned when he served Konoha, shed blood, and became a hero. But he never expected it now. Tsukumo Hatake shook his head with a bitter smile. Finally, even his own comrades jumped out to criticize him, including the one he had saved. It seems someone above was putting pressure on him. Everything he did was for the village. Although this chilled him to the bone, Hatake Tsukumo didn't regret it. If he had to do it all over again, he would still save his comrades. Because, this is who he is. Hatake Tsukumo. He always kept his ninja way, his samurai way, firmly in mind. Hatake Tsukumo looked at Konoha under the twilight, at the villagers bathed in the setting sun. The will of fire. Dad? Kakashi looked up at Hatake Tsukumo, frowning, and asked, what's wrong? His father seemed a little off today. Nothing. Hatake Tsukumo came to his senses and smiled, let's go for a walk together today. It seems like it's been a long time since we went for a walk together. Okay. Kakashi nodded, saying nothing. He had heard some rumors about his father in the village, but he always firmly believed his father was a great ninja. Hearing that his father suddenly wanted to stroll around the village today surprised Kakashi, but also relieved him. It seemed his father had moved on, the land of whirlpools. I've called you all here today because we have an important mission from above. Uzumaki re-looked at the construction team captains at the round table, pointing to the map on the table, and said, the land of whirlpools territory is slowly becoming insufficient. To avoid causing too much damage to the ecological environment, we must expand our territory. Hearing Ri's words, one of the whirlpool ninja rubbed his hands together excitedly, saying, does this mean we are going to attack other countries? After all these years of carrying bricks, could he finally go to the battlefield? What are you thinking? Uzumaki refrowned, scoffing, the land of whirlpools is a peace-loving country. We will never start a war recklessly. Moreover, Uzumaki re-glanced at the captains present, saying, the military is responsible for fighting. He glared fiercely at the whirlpool ninja. Wait, this whirlpool ninja seems to be from the military, just sent to help. But, how could a soldier speak carelessly? This could cause chaos, especially now that many ninja from other villages have entered the land of whirlpools. Perhaps there are spies from other villages hidden among them. If we talk about war now, the main force of the ninja villages will probably attack tomorrow. Our main task starts here. Uzumaki Ritsu pointed to a stretch of sea in the eastern part of the land of whirlpools and said, reclaiming land from the sea. Reclaiming land from the sea? Roshi frowned, looking at the map, and said in confusion, using earth release? If so, wouldn't that consume too much chakra? He remembered that the land of whirlpools didn't have that many earth release ninjas. If they relied solely on these ninjas, how long would it take to reclaim land? But he also felt a sense of relief. When he heard about expanding territory, He initially thought it meant war and wondered what to do. Should he notify Iwagakure? Fortunately, it was just land reclamation. At least he wouldn't feel guilty, and he had bought a house in the land of whirlpools. Uzumaki said, looking at the captain's present. The higher-ups will issue a batch of tools tomorrow for us to use for land reclamation. We haven't received the specifics yet, so we don't know. We'll probably find out tomorrow. Uzumaki said helplessly. I called you all here today so you can gather all the ninjas together. That will make management easier. He had only recently received this news. Although time was tight, since it was Ziosun's request, as his father, he could only do his best not to hold them back. Yes. Everyone's eyes sharpened, and then they nodded in response. Then everyone can go home. Uzumaki said with a smile. It might get a bit busy later. After all, the higher-ups require that enough land be reclaimed quickly to support the people's livelihood. However, everyone present smiled knowingly and said, is it because Prince Sun is getting married? The minister must treat us to a drink then. Haha. Uzumaki laughed loudly upon hearing everyone's words. Alright, we'll make sure no one is left out. Uzumaki wasn't surprised that they knew about Uzumaki Sun's upcoming marriage. After all, it was the marriage of a daimyo, and the clan head and elder were also pushing it forward. The land of whirlpools could no longer rely solely on the Uzumaki clan as before. Therefore, for the future stability of the land of whirlpools, it was necessary for Sun to marry a girl from another clan, and even take on some disciples from other clans. However, Sun was too busy, so the higher-ups didn't make any demands. It's just, what a pity. Uzumaki sighed and shook his head. He used to really like that girl Kushina. But that brat proposed to her without a word. Konoha. What was that sound? Kakashi rubbed his eyes, stood up, and muttered. Why was there such a loud noise all of a sudden? His father seemed quite happy today, so he was a little tired from playing. They'd even had some barbecue outside. It had been a long time since they'd gone out and about like this. That sound just now, Kakashi said, regaining some focus, looking at a nearby room and frowning. It sounded like it was coming from Dad's room. He stood up and walked towards the room. Dad? Kakashi knocked on the door and called out, what happened? However, there was still no sound from inside. Kakashi frowned immediately, sensing something was wrong, especially with the smell of blood. He quickly pushed the door open and looked inside. Dad? Chapter 2. Chapter 289 Heroes of Konoha, 2. Konoha. Is he dead? A villager frowned, looking at his companion. After a moment's hesitation, he said, Did we do something wrong? The villager opened his mouth, sighed, and said, perhaps. Now that I think about it, although Lord Tsukumo abandoned the mission, it seems we didn't suffer any losses. So, why did this news suddenly appear? And then, why did it suddenly spread so widely? Konoha Year 40. The White Fang of Konoha, who had rendered outstanding service to Konoha, committed suicide last night in his room, overwhelmed with guilt, leaving only the last bloodline of the Hatake family. Hatake Kakashi. Reliable sources say that someone saw Hatake Tsukumo meet Shimura Danzo on his last night, a notorious former high-ranking advisor of Konoha, who was reportedly dismissed from his post for offending a daimyo and spying on a young girl. Sure enough, all the families who heard this news felt a chill run down their spines. This matter is definitely related to Shimura Danzo. Hokage Building. Sigh. Hirozen Sarutobi, having received the news this morning, took a drag of his cigarette, sighed, and murmured, what a pity. It seemed he and Danzo had gone too far. He had only intended to give those clans whose minds were starting to wander again a warning, and incidentally, to ensure the village's ninjas would carry out their mission seriously. After all, the first rule of a ninja is to carry out missions. But he hadn't expected that someone so old would commit suicide. Danzo. Hirozen Sarutobi looked at the complaints coming up from below. It seems everyone is dissatisfied with Danzo's actions now. Although Tsukumo Hatake ended up, at least the ending was good, and these clans were starting to feel fear again. The will of fire. Hirozen Sarutobi stood up and walked outside, muttering, this is all for the peace of the village. Time to go to the meeting. And also to appease the other ninjas. Iwagakure. Hirozen Sarutobi. Anoki sneered, how laughable. The White Fang of Konoha, he was a powerful ninja recognized throughout the entire ninja world. To force even a loyal and powerful ninja to his death, the Konoha leadership is truly a bunch of idiots. But keep nerfing, Inoki murmured, narrowing his eyes. At this rate, perhaps Iwagakure will become the strongest ninja village. So, let's continue. Uzumaki. Uchiha Madara lay on a recliner with his eyes closed. He had returned to the house Tobi had bought. Although the health supplements in Uzumaki were quite effective, he was getting old and it was time for him to retire. Moreover, he still had to wait for Zetsu to arrive. That day, after hearing Uzumaki-jun's words, he finally realized, that is, God of Shinobi, opponent had actually been deceived. Kaguya Otsutsuki, Madara murmured, opening his eyes. Infinite Tsukuyomi. An illusion? White Zetsu. A slight, cold smile played on his lips. I never imagined she was someone who'd lived for 1,000 years. As for whether Uzumaki-jun was right, Madara had only been manipulated. He wasn't stupid. These past few years had calmed things down, and he'd realized that everything he'd done before was Zetsu's suggestion. Then, he'd assumed that since Zetsu was his will, it must be his own idea, and so he'd agreed. Now, thinking back, everything was indeed strange. Madara wanted true peace, to let Hashirama know that what he was doing was right, not the extinction of all humanity. But Tobi. Madara stared blankly out the window, touching the mask on his chest, murmuring, Hashirama. So many years have passed, it's time for me to see you. I wonder if you'll be surprised to see that I've lived so much longer than you? And Uchiha Mikado. Granddaughter. Madara Uchiha's lips curled slightly upwards, a fleeting smile, then he shook his head and said, how interesting. It would be time for Uchiha Mikado to get married soon. He had once participated in Hashirama's wedding, but he never imagined that blonde girl would grow up so much, while he was still a bachelor. But, in the end, the Uchiha clan still won. Father. Kakashi looked at the tombstone before him, tears welling in his eyes, tightly clutching a short sword, murmuring, why did this happen? Was being a ninja and fulfilling his mission really more important than his comrades? But his teachers hadn't taught him like this. And the will of fire. His father hadn't done anything wrong, so why did those people force him? Why didn't he understand? Kakashi. Hiruzen Sarutobi patted Kakashi's shoulder, saying apologetically, I'm sorry, it's all my fault for not paying attention to Tsukumo's feelings, which has led to this. Don't be sad. I believe your father wouldn't want to see you like this either. Tsukumo. He was a hero of Konoha, he sacrificed himself for Konoha. Hiruzen Sarutobi patted Kakashi's head. Konoha will never let a hero bleed and weep. However, Kakashi still didn't answer, only quietly looking at the tombstone. Hiruzen Sarutobi sighed, told the Anbu hidden in the shadows to take care of Kakashi, and then turned and left. Danzo, it's time to end this. Hatake Tsukumo. Jiraiya looked at the newspaper in his hand, sighed, and murmured, Danzo. He had only been out for a few years, how could something like this happen? Were the Konoha high-ranking officials all a bunch of bastards? They knew how much Tsukumo had sacrificed for the village, how much he loved the village, and they still drove him to his death. Besides, isn't saving one's comrades the right thing to do? The old man's really confused. Jiraiya casually picked up the wine cup beside him, looking at Senju Hideaki before him, and said, you really don't plan to go back to the village? No, I'm not going back. Senju Hideaki shook his head, smiling bitterly. Konoha isn't suitable for the Senju anymore. Especially this morning's news, even Konoha's heroes could be betrayed and killed. What would the Senju clan do if they went back now? To fill a hole? Especially since they concealed their departure from Konoha from the Hokage back then. That's tantamount to betrayal. Going back would definitely mean certain death. Sigh. Hearing Senju Hideaki's words, Jiraiya sighed, helplessly saying, where's Tsunade? She thought her clansmen, her family, were all dead. Princess Tsunade, eh? Senju Hideaki paused, head bowed, and said, I'm sorry. I know. Jiraiya nodded, seeing Hideaki's expression, took another sip of sake, and said, I will keep this a secret for you. Not going back, perhaps it wasn't so bad. He had carefully observed the land of whirlpools over the past few years. The Senju clan hadn't suffered unfair treatment there, in fact, it was better than in Konoha. He knew. Konoha would never implement this approach. Handing over military power to the daimyo. Jiraiya believed that if he proposed it today, he would surely rebel tomorrow. So, Since he was out, he shouldn't concern himself with village affairs. The advisors would make their own decisions, he shouldn't interfere. Besides, who could be sure that the god of shinobi's one country one village policy was bad? Since everything's alright, Senju Hideaki stood up and said, I'll head back now. The team has important matters to attend to tomorrow. Oh, okay. Hearing Senju Hideaki's words, Jiraiya quickly wiped his mouth, put down his blanket, and said, wait a minute, I need to go to the restroom. There's something else I forgot to tell you. Wait here for a bit. Then, he quickly stood up and walked towards the back. Although Senju Hideaki didn't know what was going on with Jiraiya, he still sat down and decided to wait a while. And Jiraiya. That person will pay the bill later. Jiraiya pulled over the bartender, subtly pointing to Senju Hideaki sitting in the chair, and said seriously, remember, he'll pay. Then, without looking back, he walked towards the back door. When has the Toad Sage ever paid for drinks with someone? Looks like I should find a job. Jiraiya shook his head helplessly and said, otherwise, selling chakra every day will only cover my expenses. After all, he isn't a ninja with a vast amount of chakra. Chapter 3. A surprise, right? By the way, this book probably has around 200,000 words left, and it'll be ending soon enough. Chapter 290 Land Reclamation. Land reclamation is a major undertaking for the land of whirlpools, as relying solely on a small island would severely limit its future development. However, while land reclamation expands the land of whirlpool's territory, it also impacts the ecological environment. Therefore, careful consideration must be given to the construction process to mitigate these impacts. Fortunately, this is the ninja world, where unconventional methods can be used for ecological restoration. So, we need to be careful about hygiene, Uzumaki-jun said to his father. Don't cause too much damage to the environment. There's no need to follow the develop first, clean up later approach now. The reclamation machinery is ready, mostly made from repurposed old wooden boats. Even the tech geek Chiro came today. He'll be explaining how to use the reclamation tools and how to avoid potential accidents. I'll make the arrangements, Uzumaki nodded, patting Uzumaki-jun on the shoulder. A wave of emotion washed over him. His son had grown so much, and it would be time for him to get married soon. But, he couldn't say anything about matters of the heart. After all, speaking carelessly would get him beaten up by Mealing. He hesitated, then said, that girl Kushina. As for the clan head. Sigh. In the end, Uzumaki Risa said nothing, shook his head, and sighed. You handle it. Uzumaki-jun looked at his father helplessly. He decided to go see Kushina later. Looking at the clan head inspecting the area, he saw that on this important day, almost all the high-ranking officials of the land of whirlpools were present, even Kikuzu. He needed to estimate the necessary funds for this operation and the advantages for the land of whirlpools. Although the land of whirlpools was no longer the poor country it once was, thanks to its massive trade exports, it could be said to be the most developed country in the ninja world. However, Kikuzu was still a competent finance minister. He would carefully review and analyze any matter concerning money, and only allocate funds to them if he deemed it appropriate. Chira. Uzumaki soon looked at Chira and asked, how's the situation? There shouldn't be any problems. Chira nodded and said, I've created a foolproof operating method according to your instructions. You can basically learn it after watching it once. If you can't learn it, what kind of ninja are you? But it consumes too much chakra. Chira sighed and shook his head helplessly. Although we have a chakra converter, it's still not enough for the ninjas here right now. So it might take quite a while to create a large enough continent. There's nothing we can do. Uzumaki soon spread his hands after hearing this and said, most of those who have come to the land of whirlpools are civilians, and there are simply too few native ninjas. This is because there are very few ninjas in the ninja world to begin with. We can only take it one step at a time. Uzumaki soon sighed, looking at the land reclamation tool that had already started operating. You've created something amazing. If this thing were sold to the land of water, perhaps their small islands could be connected to form a continent that is no less impressive than the land of fire. But, it's impossible to sell this kind of thing to the land of water right now. Yes. Chiro said with emotion, if you hadn't saved me back then, I probably wouldn't be seeing this scene now. He had moved from the realm of wood to the realm of steel. Now, the study of steel machinery had entered the affiliated academy of the land of whirlpools. Sasori was studying it when he first transferred, And he graduated last year. Several years had passed in the blink of an eye. Later maintenance might be a bit troublesome, Chiro said, looking at the enormous tool he had created. I just don't know the lifespan of these things yet. You handle it? Uzumaki-jun nodded, saying, I know absolutely nothing about this. Besides, how much sea area could a small island fill? So, the land of hot springs above, an evil religion. One day, the land of whirlpools would definitely save the people of the land of hot springs who were suffering under the oppression of that evil religion. But now, it's not the right time yet. Uzumaki-jun said with emotion. What do you mean it's not the right time yet? Chiro asked curiously. Is there anything else we need to be careful about? Nothing. Uzumaki soon patted Chiro's shoulder and said, it's just that I'm getting married in a while, come over for a drink. Right now, he had something to do. Because he sensed that White Zetsu was coming. Okay. However, before Chiro could finish speaking, Uzumaki soon left using Flying Thunder God technique. Chiro could only shake his head helplessly. They knew about the wedding of the daimyo of the land of whirlpools. After all, that girl named Uchiha Mikado was a colleague of Hishiko. It was said that she was a gentle, cute, and beautiful girl, just like Hishiko. But, given Uzumaki-sun's current reputation in the land of whirlpools, even if he acted like a scumbag, who would say anything to him? Everyone would probably say with admiration. He truly deserves to be the daimyo of the land of whirlpools. So, it's truly enviable. Chiro at this moment, hearing someone call him, Chiro quickly put on a serious expression, turned around, and smiled at his wife. He's such a devoted and filial man. What are we having for lunch today? Kaianluo asked, taking the lunchbox Zizi had brought him. You've really worked hard. He would never make a fundamental mistake. You've been staying up late these past few days, so I made you some fish soup, Zizi said with a smile, carefully opening the lunchbox. It'll help you recover. Really? Kaianluo said, holding Zizi's hand gratefully. Zizi is so good to me. You're naughty, Zizi chuckled, covering her mouth. After arranging the food, she asked, Scorpion has graduated, and he's decided to join the mechanical unit. What do you think? The mechanical unit? Kaianluo took a sip of the fish soup, frowned, sighed, and said, my child has grown up and has his own ideas. As his father, all I can do is cheer him on from behind. Although he still didn't want Scorpion to join the army, he hoped Scorpion could intern in the mechanical department for a few years, gain some knowledge, and eventually work in development. After all, war kills people. The mechanized unit was newly formed last year, using chakra energy guns, chakra cannons, and chakra tanks that hadn't even been developed yet, not to mention the undeveloped Gundam. But Sasori is. Zizi opened her mouth, wanting to say, what if Sasori appeared on the front lines and was seen by the Sand Village? Would that cause problems? So, it's best to stay in the rear like them. However, sigh. Kaianluo sighed, put down her bowl, and said, I guess in Sasori's mind, the Sand Village is already a strange place. Although her mother would come over whenever she had time these past few years, on the day her mother returned to the village. Sori has become a rogue ninja of the Sand Village. Rumor has it that he was bewitched by a mysterious Rinnegan. Yes. Zizi smiled upon hearing Kaianluo's words, nodded, and said, I understand. That's what she thought too, since it's in the past, let it be. She was just a little worried about Scorpion. As a mother, she only wanted Scorpion to be safe and sound. She wanted him to get married and have a few children in a few years. By then, she would still be young and would definitely be able to see her grandchildren at the academy. Such a life, simple and peaceful, would be very happy. Chapter 1. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 291 I Don't Have It. Does it have to be like this? Uzumaki-jun sighed inwardly as he watched the white Zetsu clone turn into a tree again. He wasn't going to do anything to Zetsu, so why did it always turn into a tree after delivering a message? Was this how white Zetsu clones were supposed to be wasted? And, couldn't you find a different place for landscaping? He had personally chopped down that tree last time, and now he had to do it again. This wasn't how office landscaping was done. Haruko? Uzumaki-jun stroked his chin, a slight smile playing on his lips, and murmured, "Finally, I've been waiting for you." Haruko, a genius biologist whose talents were wasted on being a ninja, who, due to his inferiority complex, created the Onigaru technique, thus reaching the pinnacle of life, possessing a dog that was both obedient and beautiful, with a voluptuous figure. So, he could have lived a happy life, but instead, he provoked the overpowered class, only to be beaten up and filled with regret. Even his own dog was killed. What a miserable life. I wonder where that dog came from? Uzumaki-jun sighed. A dog that's both capable and handsome is rare these days. It should be about time. He didn't want to run into Konoha, so he would only show himself after Haruko had all the Konoha ninjas hidden, giving him a chance to realize his life's value. Being a ninja wasn't suitable for him. Are they gone? Black Zetsu looked at White Zetsu and said, "We should move too." As long as he took Madara away this time, he would never go to the land of whirlpools again. He, the third son of the mother of chakra, also had his own dignity. Yes. White Zetsu nodded and said, "The White Zetsu clone that was tracking Naruto has sent back the spores and saw that brat appear." He didn't care. Everything was done according to Black Zetsu's will. Of course, there was also Toby. Should they bring that idiot back? Let's go then. Black Zetsu breathed a sigh of relief and said, "Otherwise, Lord Madara definitely won't be able to wait. After all, Lord Madara is getting old. And the Rinnegan, that's the key to rescuing his mother. So, there can't be any mistakes." After sensing White Zetsu's return, he slowly sank to the bottom of the earth. Time is of the essence. He needs to take Lord Madara and Toby away while that Uzumaki-sun is gone. They didn't catch up? Haruko covered his wound, a bitter smile on his face, and murmured, "As expected. Even though I've become a Jonin, the village still looks down on me. Otherwise, why would they stop chasing halfway? They probably think I'm dispensable, especially since the forbidden technique hasn't been successfully researched yet." Konoha. Haruko looked in the direction of Konoha with complicated emotions, sighed, and clenched his fist. "I will definitely come back. Why is it that everyone has 6 years of compulsory education, yet Jiraiya and the other two can become the legendary Sannin, their names resounding throughout the ninja world? And he only became a Jonin because of luck. Just because they had a Hokage as their master? You know, back then, Jiraiya and he were the last and second to last in the school. Genius." Haruko chuckled bitterly, "I really am a piece of trash." But he believed, with the demon sprout technique, he could definitely surpass Jiraiya and Orochimaru. Because he created this technique himself. If it weren't for my congenital deficiency, Haruko's lips curled slightly, a cold smile on his face. "I would definitely succeed. He was a genius to begin with. If it weren't for his physical limitations, he would have surpassed Jiraiya long ago." So, Jiraiya, Orochimaru. Haruko murmured, "I will prove that I am better than all of you." And then, "Young man." A leisurely voice rang out. "Do you want to realize your value? Do you want to be revered by thousands? Do you want your name to resound throughout the ninja world? If you do, then sign this contract." The Land of Whirlpools. Today, a momentous event occurred in the Land of Whirlpools. All its citizens witnessed the sudden appearance of a giant ship and strange equipment in the Eastern Sea, filling them with excitement. If the Land of Whirlpools territory truly expanded, obtaining citizenship would undoubtedly be much easier. This was especially true for the migrant workers who had only been there for a few years. After 2 years of labor, they yearned to settle down. After all, only here could they support themselves and their families through their own efforts. No matter the job, as long as one worked diligently, their monthly salary would not only be enough to feed and shelter a family of 3, but would even leave some surplus, something they had never dared to imagine before. Therefore, they desperately hoped to join the Land of Whirlpools, perhaps even saving enough to buy a house so that their descendants would no longer have to endure displacement, cold, and hunger. So, they all watched, their hearts filled with longing, for a place of their own on that newly reclaimed land. "You've arrived?" Madara's closed eyes snapped open, looking at the black and white Zetsu that had suddenly appeared before him. He said calmly, "Finally." He hadn't slept well tonight, it was so noisy, a constant commotion since morning. At his age, it was so hard to get some rest and sunshine. "Lord Madara," Zetsu nodded respectfully, "It's time to leave." "Yes." Madara nodded, sighing, "It's time to leave." So much time has passed. Then, He quietly looked at Zetsu. Is there anything else, Lord Madara? Zetsu's heart skipped a beat, a bad feeling creeping in. He said, if there's nothing else, let's leave quickly. Otherwise, once the Uzumaki soon arrived, they wouldn't be able to escape. Nothing much? Madara's lips curled slightly upward as he asked casually, I just wanted to ask you something. What is it? Zetsu asked curiously, Lord Madara. It's just... Madara suddenly opened his eyes, are you lying to me? Suddenly, he shouted. Jinjutsu. Who are you? Hiruko looked at the red-haired man who had suddenly appeared before him, narrowing his eyes, and said, what do you want? Don't be nervous. Uzumaki-jun spread his hands, a smile on his face, and said, I mean no harm. Let me introduce myself first. I am the current daimyo of the land of whirlpools, Uzumaki-jun. The youngest Kage in the ninja world? Hiruko sneered, another genius. Just how jealous is this kid? Uzumaki-jun was internally cursing, but smiled and said, no. In my opinion, you are also a genius. Are you mocking me? Hiruko gripped his kunai tightly and sneered, what do you want from me? Suddenly appearing before him, yet claiming no harm. It seems this person wants something from me. Hiruko stared at Uzumaki-jun with a conflicted expression. He knew that Jun only possessed one valuable possession, his self-created demon sprout technique. But he would never hand it over. Don't dream, Hiruko said fiercely, glaring at Jun. I will not hand over the demon sprout technique. This was his hope of surpassing Jiraiya and Orochimaru. Jun was utterly bewildered. What did you say? The demon sprout technique? Who wanted that? Was it as useful as his system? He could only sigh helplessly, narrowing his eyes and smiling. What I want isn't the demon sprout technique, but you. The future biologist of the land of whirlpools. Chapter 292 The situation. No compensation. So, I only left for a moment, and Zetsu appeared? It seems Zetsu has been hiding from him all along. It was premeditated. Looking at the villa now a ruin, Uzumaki soon sighed and said, luckily, Madara has already paid off the mortgage. Otherwise, not only would he have lost the house, but he'd also have to continue paying the mortgage. Just think about it, he's so old, how pitiful. However, Madara immediately became unhappy, glaring at Uzumaki-sun, and said, kid, what did you say? Oh, nothing. Uzumaki-sun smiled and said, with your retirement pension and Tobi's salary, you can definitely rebuild it, don't worry. Who's worried about that? Madara looked at Uzumaki-sun speechlessly. This kid's thinking was even more unpredictable than Hashirama's. He sighed and said, I mean, he's escaped now. Especially since he's alerted the enemy. What should we do next? It's alright. Uzumaki-sun smiled and said, he can't cause any trouble. He's just a dutiful son of the ninja world. Don't even mention a weakling, even if you called his mother, Uzumaki-sun wouldn't be afraid. Madara sighed, whatever. He said, I won't live much longer. Especially after using the Rinnegan, his body is even weaker now. The ninja world ultimately belongs to you juniors. He finally understood what Hashirama had said back then. The ninja world belongs to the young. Hashirama. Madara suddenly smiled, shook his head, and murmured, what you said wasn't all nonsense. And at this moment, Lord Madara. Tobi also rushed back, seeing the house he had worked so hard to build turned into ruins. He jumped up and down, saying, who did this? All those years. Was it easy for him? Madara looked at Tobi, his eyes narrowed immediately, and finally, thinking of how Tobi had taken care of him so diligently over the years, buying him milk candy, tofu pudding, health supplements, and even taking him for walks when he had time, and he even bought this house. He sighed inwardly, his face expressionless, and said calmly, I did it. You. Upon hearing it was Madara-sama, Tobi's anger immediately subsided. He scratched his head with a grin and said, Madara-sama did a good job, you demolished it so beautifully. Uzumaki-jun, standing nearby, looked at Madara and Tobi speechlessly. He had thought that with Madara's explosive temper, he would definitely seal Tobi away with Chibaku Tensei, but he hadn't expected. Madara-sama had really changed. Jun. Uchiha Mikado also ran over with a worried expression. Then, looking at Uzumaki-jun, she blushed and asked, what happened? Nothing. Uzumaki-jun looked at Uchiha Mikado's expression, took her hand, and said with a smile, Madara-sama just suddenly practiced some ninjutsu and demolished the house. In the future, Mikado will definitely be a gentle wife. Then, Uchiha Mikado looked at Grandpa Madara and complained, Grandpa Madara, why didn't you test your ninjutsu in a more spacious place? Looking at the house that had become a pile of ruins. Sighing, she said, how about Grandpa Madara and Tobi-sensei stay at my place for a while? It seemed they couldn't stay here anymore. Madara. He snorted coldly, turned his head away, and instead of answering Mikado Uchiha, looked at Jun Uzumaki and said calmly, is that house at the academy still there? He really didn't want to go to the Uchiha clan's encampment. Yes, Jun Uzumaki nodded, it hasn't been allocated to any other teacher. After all, it was Madara's house when he taught in the land of whirlpools, and it could definitely be turned into a tourist attraction later. So, he hadn't damaged it at all. Push me over there, Madara said, looking at Mikado Uchiha with a cold snort. Grandpa Madara. Mikado hesitated, but seeing Grandpa Madara's resolute expression, she could only agree. Anyway, she could take care of Grandpa Madara at the academy. Just as Uchiha Mikado, pushing Madara apologetically, nodded to Uzumaki-jun. HMPH. Madara snorted coldly at Uzumaki-jun, saying indifferently, don't bully Mikado, or else. This old man will beat you up. Uzumaki-jun smiled helplessly upon hearing Madara's words, watching Uchiha Mikado and Madara's departing figures, and sighed inwardly. Madara. I wonder if Hashirama would be happy to know that his best friend has become like this? And then, Tobi approached shyly, pointed to the house, and said, is there any compensation? Sorry. Uzumaki sighed, shook his head, and said regretfully, this was caused by human error, and the land of whirlpools will not compensate? So, he'll have to rebuild it himself with his own money. Then can you make it cheaper? Tobi poked his hands, saying embarrassedly, after all, Madara-sama and I are public servants of the land of whirlpools. Having contributed so much to the education of the land of whirlpools, a 50% discount wouldn't be unreasonable, would it? Sigh. Uzumaki soon patted Tobi's shoulder, sighed, and said, go back to the infrastructure department and ask around. Just say I said so. Indeed. Tobi's money was all spent on health supplements and candy, he definitely didn't have enough for reconstruction. Thinking about Madara and Tobi's contributions over the years, he decided not to be too ruthless. Also, if you see Zetsu, tell him. Actually, we really can cooperate. Uzumaki-soon, really needed a danzo. Then, leaving a bewildered Tobi, he walked towards the distance. There, someone else was waiting for him. The daimyo of the land of whirlpools. Jiraiya looked at Uzumaki-soon, who had walked up to him, crossed his arms, and said calmly, the youngest Kage in the ninja world. Uzumaki-soon. He had arrived when he sensed the commotion, but, by the time he got there, everything was over. Only an old man in a wheelchair and a house reduced to ruins remained. What a pity. That villa must have been very expensive. The legendary Sannin of Konoha. Uzumaki-jun said with a smile, Jiraiya, the toad sage of Mount Myaboku. So many years. He hadn't gone to see Jiraiya, and now he was seeing him today. And, why didn't this lecherous sage find a proper job? However, wrong. Jiraiya shook his head, saying seriously, you missed the most important point. What point? Uzumaki-jun looked at Jiraiya with a puzzled expression. Was he a future famous author of erotic novels? Sigh. Seeing Uzumaki-jun's confused expression, Jiraiya sighed, raised his head at a 45-degree angle with a melancholy air, and said, the dream of countless girls in the ninja world. Uzumaki-jun looked at him speechlessly, saying irritably, what are you waiting for me for? He knew perfectly well that the person secretly sending him a message was definitely waiting for him, but, they wanted to borrow money and discuss it in person. The ninjas below had passed on a lot of information to him, this old rogue, borrows money everywhere and never pays it back. Ahem. Hearing Uzumaki-jun's words, Jiraiya finally remembered something important and said with a serious expression, what just happened? Such a loud noise, and such power. It's definitely not simple, especially since he saw a black and white figure. He, the toad sage of Mount Myaboku, sensed in his heart. This matter is definitely not simple. What happened? Hearing Jiraiya's words, Uzumaki-jun narrowed his eyes. As a famous director and screenwriter in the ninja world, he had a good idea. He sighed, raised his head, looked at Jiraiya with a sigh, and said, this matter begins with Chapter 3, just to clarify, I don't have any drafts saved up, the general plot is just in my head, so it's estimated to be around 200,000 words. The exact number depends on the situation, but it's estimated to be around 300,000 words at most, to bring the novel to 1,000,000 words and finish it. Chapter 293 Taking the Back Door. Damn it. Black Zetsu said, his face dark. Looks like our plan has been exposed. But, how did Lord Madara know? Or rather, who told him? It was that brat, White Zetsu said, spreading his hands helplessly. He exchanged spores with Toby on the way there. So, while they were working themselves to the bone, those two were actually working as teachers in the land of whirlpools? Sure enough, that idiot Toby, has he forgotten their grand goal? Uzumaki-jun. Hearing White Zetsu's words, Black Zetsu's face turned ashen. He said angrily, I knew that wretched brat knew something. But, where did he find out? Could it be Hagoromo? Impossible, that unfilial son is long gone. But if it wasn't him, who could it be? Black Zetsu frowned. Looks like we need to be even more careful in our future actions. He'd been undercover for 1,000 years, and he still didn't know who else knew his secret. After all, he'd outlived everyone else. Of course, except for that certain toad. What should we do now? White Zetsu sighed and said, the Rinnegan is absolutely essential. This. Black Zetsu paused for a moment after hearing this, then sighed and said, once Madara dies, I don't think he'll live much longer. The Rinnegan is the most crucial thing to save his mother, so he has to get it no matter what. He had experimented with a Mangekyo Sharingan he obtained a few years ago to see if it could awaken the Rinnegan, but all methods failed. It seems, to awaken the Rinnegan, it's not just about being a descendant of Hamura, there must be something inside. Therefore, he dared not gamble that there was still a descendant of Hamura who could awaken it. What about that brat? White Zetsu scratched his head and said, even if Madara is dead, that brat still knows our plan. No matter what, they can't get around him. Hearing White Zetsu's words, Black Zetsu sighed helplessly. That made sense. Now they didn't even know how much that brat knew about Madara, whether he only knew that he was deceiving Madara, or, he knew everything. If it's the latter, it'll be dangerous. After all, no ninja wants to see their mother appear. Wait? Black Zetsu said through gritted teeth, wait until he dies. 100 years is considered a long life for humans. Considering his Uzumaki Clan identity, what's wrong with letting him live for another 120 years? Besides, ninjas are full of unexpected events. Who knows, he might suddenly choke to death while drinking water. Whatever. White Zetsu spread his hands and said casually, I'll go back and collect pollen. Anyway, you're all about willpower. When you can't win, it's not bad to just lie low. They've been lying low for 1,000 years, so they don't care about lying low for another 100 or two. Besides, once a ninja is over 50, their strength will drop significantly. So, maybe they can beat that hateful brat in the future. When it comes to lifespan, they're not afraid. Let's go. Black Zetsu sighed and said, let's hope there won't be any more accidents. If anything else goes wrong, he'll find a cave to hide in for a few 100 years, wait until all this batch of ninjas are dead and forgotten before coming out, I see. Jiraiya nodded, wiping the drool from his mouth as he looked at the fire of joy in Uzumaki-jun's hand, and said with a serious expression, they really are here to collect legendary blades. This is a national treasure. The really valuable kind. If I got my hands on it, why would I need a job? I could gather materials every day. So neither the land of whirlpools nor the Akatsuki know what the Godless Alliance is up to? Jiraiya murmured, stroking his chin. Looks like things are getting a bit complicated. The enemy is in the dark while we are in the light. We're likely to suffer a great loss. No. Uzumaki soon carefully held the fire of joy, speaking earnestly, according to our investigation with the Akatsuki, this Godless Alliance has existed for a long time. Although we still don't know what they're trying to do. Uzumaki soon put the fire of joy away, he'd only read it once, he still needed to use it to scam, sell to other ninja villages. Looking at Jiraiya, he said in a serious tone, based on our speculation, they seem to be collecting these blades to summon something, or to activate something. But one thing is certain. They're definitely doing something bad. He didn't know what to do with these blades anyway, and since he jumped out himself, he could only wish him a happy life of hiding. Therefore, we absolutely must be careful. Uzumaki-jun looked at Jiraiya seriously. We absolutely cannot let them succeed. Looks like I'll have to tell the old man first. Jiraiya nodded in agreement and said, but that blade. It was obtained by Akatsuki by accident and entrusted to Uzumaki for auction. I will have someone send it to the Land of Iron for auction. Uzumaki-jun said righteously, this blade should not belong to the land of Uzumaki. So, it's better to cash in. We can take this opportunity to initiate a 5-cage summit. Uzumaki-jun sighed, looking worried about the safety of the ninja world, and said, our land of Uzumaki. A small country with few people, we won't join the fun. But, Uzumaki-jun raised his head, looking at Jiraiya with clear eyes, no matter what the 5-cage decide in the end, our land of Uzumaki will follow orders. For the safety of the ninja world, we will never hold them back. So, let the 5 great ninja villages compete for this ninja sword. The land of Uzumaki only wants money. Hearing Uzumaki-jun's words, Jiraiya was immediately moved. He hadn't expected that there were still people in the ninja world who selflessly dedicated themselves to the peace of the ninja world. He sighed and said, don't worry, this weapon. I will absolutely not let the land of Whirlpool suffer. Hearing Jiraiya's words, Uzumaki-jun nodded with satisfaction, but a trace of reluctance still appeared on his face. He said with regret, it's alright, it's all for the peace of the ninja world. Uzumaki-jun, was just that kind of righteous and selfless person. Jiraiya sighed, looking at Uzumaki-jun with admiration in his eyes. He felt a surge of emotion. As expected of the youngest kage in the ninja world, as expected of someone who could create a pure land like the land of whirlpools. If he really was the chosen one. Holy crap. Jiraiya seemed to remember something, slapping his forehead hard and saying, I almost forgot about what the great toad sage asked me to do. Then, he looked at Uzumaki-jun with a serious expression. The great toad sage invites you to Mount Maiboku. It seems this kid really might be the chosen one, otherwise, why would the great toad sage invite him? But, hearing Jiraiya's words, Uzumaki-jun looked at him in confusion. Why go to Mount Maiboku? You know, he doesn't like toads. Of course, he did eat quite a bit of stir-fried frogs. A specialty of the land of whirlpools, which he heard was selling very well. But, Uzumaki-jun narrowed his eyes and smiled, saying, sure, when? It was actually that mysterious great toad sage who wanted to see him. Why? Did he already know his true purpose in releasing Kaguya and planned to have him gang up on at Mount Maiboku? But, it's just a bunch of toads, it's uncertain who will gang up on whom. Tomorrow then. Jiraiya frowned, thought for a moment, and said, I want to go to Mount Maiboku to talk to them. Outsiders, no contract signed. Definitely. I see. Uzumaki-jun nodded, saying, if there's nothing else, I'll be leaving now. There are still many things to do in the land of whirlpools. However, wait a minute. Jiraiya quickly stopped Uzumaki-jun, grinning obsequiously as he approached, saying apologetically, there's something I need your help with. What's going on? Uzumaki-jun frowned upon seeing Jiraiya's expression. Could it be? No money involved. He quickly adopted a we don't know each other expression, wanting to escape using Flying Thunder God technique. Jiraiya clasped his hands together, looked around, and whispered, I just want to ask you for a favor. Chapter 1. Chapter 294 Authentic Cuisine. After hearing Jiraiya's words, Uzumaki-jun was both amused and exasperated. So that's what it was about. But, when did Jiraiya apply for a teaching position? Why didn't he know? Finally, after patting his chest and promising, in his capacity as the daimyo of Uzumaki, that he would speak to the academy and have him become a great teacher of the people of Uzumaki, Jiraiya left satisfied. Uzumaki-jun shook his head helplessly. He was waiting for Jiraiya to become a teacher, but the academy rejected him. Really, are background checks this strict now? It's just a few crimes he, the daimyo of Uzumaki, can't even remember, like not paying back debts, deceiving children, running red lights, and driving without a license. Sure enough, in the original world, Jiraiya definitely wouldn't be able to find a job. But undeniably, Jiraiya would be quite qualified as a teacher. Just look at his students, 2 Hokage, 3 peace-loving gangsters, and a Hokage's grand student. Uzumaki needs top-tier teachers like him. But Jiraiya definitely couldn't be the one to teach him the right mindset. He didn't want a bunch of little devils appearing in the land of whirlpools. So, I should still tell the clan leader, Uzumaki-jun sighed, special talents deserve special treatment, at most, Lower their salaries a bit. Haruko looked at the laboratory in front of him and sighed. He knew he couldn't escape now. Especially when he saw the black vortex symbol on his hand, perhaps he would never be able to leave it for the rest of his life. I hope he can keep his promise, Haruko murmured, otherwise he would definitely let the land of whirlpools know that he was not to be trifled with. 5 years. As long as 5 years passed, he would let him leave. And during this time, as long as he didn't harm the interests and people of the land of whirlpools, his experiments wouldn't be prohibited, and he would even give him everything he wanted. Glory, fame. Haruko clenched his fists and walked to his office. He would definitely surpass that loser Jiraiya. Upon arriving, the daimyo of the land of whirlpools showed him around and introduced him to the person in charge, an old man with white hair and a shaky gait. However, his status seemed quite high. He appeared to have made significant contributions to the land of whirlpool's scientific research. Everyone at the research institute seemed to respect him greatly. Not the respect of a ninja, but he couldn't quite put his finger on it. Haruko sat down at his seat and opened the documents on the table. This was the research project he needed to undertake. A cold smile appeared on his face. No matter how righteous they sounded, in the end, wasn't it just like the hypocritical Konoha? Forbidden Ninjutsu. Every ninja village and nation would secretly research it. However, when he saw the project in the document, Haruko's face turned green. Artificial Ninja Beast Project. This was relatively normal. But the following. New Plant Cultivation Project 1, New Type of Corn. New Plant Cultivation Project 2, New Type of Rice. New Plant Cultivation Project. Genetically Modified Project. Life Elixir Enhancement Project. There were both plants and animals listed, along with previous experimental records. But, a life-saving potion? Haruko frowned, muttering, what exactly is it? He hadn't expected the land of whirlpools to require a Konoha biologist genius like himself to research such a thing. It was too beneath him. However, Haruko touched the vortex on his right hand. He should hurry and complete the mission, and get through the 5 years. During this time, he could also refine his demon sprout technique, which would surely surprise the legendary Sannin. A slight smile played on his lips as he murmured, I wonder if Jiraiya and the others will be surprised when they see a completely new me? HMPH. He would let everyone know that he, Haruko, was also a genius. So, this fire joy can finally be auctioned off? Kakuzu squinted, saying, this time, we need to swindle, cough cough, which ninja village to sell it to. Hundreds of billions. Kakuzu, didn't care who he swindled, as long as he had money. The land of iron, Uzumaki-jun said with a smile. You'll have to go to the land of iron sometime. The 5 great ninja villages will be holding a 5-cage summit. We can auction off this ninja sword to them while we're at it. The 5-cage summit? Kakuzu frowned upon hearing Uzumaki-jun's words. What's going to happen this time? It has little to do with our land of whirlpools. Uzumaki-jun shook his head, a mysterious smile playing on his lips. It's just that a certain filial son is in danger. In that case. Kakuzu thought for a moment, then said, should we specifically sell it to a certain ninja village? For example, Kirigakure? The Frostmourne is in Konoha. If we sell the Fire Joy to Kirigakure, the 2 villages will definitely fight. No need, Uzumaki-jun said righteously. The most important thing in business is integrity, so this time, the highest bidder wins. He also needed to go out in a few days to refine the script. We can't just sell to a village because it's on our side. Uzumaki-jun looked at Kakuzu seriously, then sighed in disappointment. Comrade Kakuzu. Your understanding is lacking. What happened? You never used to ask questions like this. I don't believe you. Kakuzu looked at Uzumaki-jun speechlessly. If I hadn't been selling weapons to you for years, I almost would have believed you. Besides, probably none of the 5 great ninja villages have a good relationship with the land of whirlpools. If you add those bloodline clans that the land of whirlpools swindled back, they'd want to strangle us. But I understand. Kakuzu nodded and said, whoever pays the most, will go. Listening to the boss is always the right thing to do. He, Kakuzu, is ultimately a simple person, not one with so many hidden agendas. And at this moment, Mount Myaboku, Lord Fukasaku, Lord Shima, Jiraiya said, looking at the 2 toads, one old and one young, before him. Where's the Grey Toad Sage? He glanced at a rice bowl on the table in front of Lord Fukasaku. His timing seemed rather off. Oh, It's little Jiraiya. Fukasaku put down his chopsticks upon seeing Jiraiya and asked, "Have you eaten? This old woman made a lot of your favorite dishes. Sit down and eat with us. Who likes to eat?" Jiraiya quickly waved his hand and said, "No need, I'm already full." Looking at the disgusting insects, Jiraiya felt he'd better finish what he was saying quickly, otherwise, what if Lord Fukasaku made him stay for dinner? He'd had enough of these insects. "It's what the Great Toad Sage told me last time, like this and that. This matter." Fukasaku frowned and said, "The Great Sage also told me that since we've found it, Jiraiya should bring it over tomorrow. I'll have Shima make more insects. We can't let Mount Myaboku neglect our guests." Hearing Fukasaku's words, Jiraiya suddenly felt that maybe he should come a little later tomorrow? Otherwise, what if Uzumaki-jun got angry when he saw that he had brought him to eat insects? His position depended on him. So, no need, no need. Jiraiya chuckled and said, "We'll probably come a little later tomorrow. He'd better have Uzumaki-jun bring more canned food tomorrow." He quickly used the reverse summoning jutsu to go back. Just then, "Where's Jiraiya?" Shima came out carrying dishes and said, "Why didn't you stay for dinner?" He said he was full. Fukasaku picked up a worm and said, "The worms were really delicious today. Tomorrow, make them like that too." Although Jiraiya said he didn't need it, but Mount Myaboku couldn't let the toads lose face. So, when guests came, they definitely had to let him try the authentic cuisine of Mount Myaboku. He would surely like it. Chapter 2, Nothing More. Chapter 295 The Black-Hearted Daimyo of the Land of Whirlpools. Afeti felt he'd spend the next 10 years paying off his debts. He'd painstakingly paid off the villa alone, but before long, Madara had blasted it into ruins. His heart was filled with resentment, not towards Madara, but towards White Setsu. Could they have fought somewhere else? And, 9.9% discount. Afeti sighed inwardly, muttering, so much more to pay off. He was supposed to be happily applying for reconstruction at the infrastructure department today, because Lord Sun had said he'd get a discount. Given the influence of the daimyo of Whirlpool Country, it should have been at least 50%, if not 30-40%. But Afeti realized he'd been too naive. He hadn't realized 9.9% was a discount. Anyway, when he went to apply for reconstruction, he'd inquired at the infrastructure department and pointed out that Lord Sun had said he could get a discount. However, the head of the infrastructure department said directly that although His Highness Sun had given an oral decree, finances were under the jurisdiction of the finance minister of the Whirlpool Kingdom, Lord Kikuzu, known as the Black-Faced God. Therefore, Afeti needed to provide relevant documentation, and he also needed to reapply for a loan to prepare for reconstruction, since he had no money. Afeti then thought it wasn't far, so he went to the finance department. He was quite familiar with the finance department, having come every month to pay off debts before. So, upon arriving, he easily found the window and applied for a loan and the discount His Highness Sun had promised. The result? There's no precedent for this, the person in charge explained earnestly to Afeti. Seeing Afeti's disappointed expression, he added that he would consult with their finance minister. So, Afeti waited there all afternoon, and then received a certificate for a 9.9% discount, along with instructions to repay on time. Then, the person in charge, somewhat confused, called him away, telling him not to block the line behind him. Looking at the 9.9% discount notice in his hand, Afeti was immediately disappointed. He quickly ran to Lord Sun's office to ask if he could get a larger discount since they had both worked under Lord Madara. But he wasn't there. According to Lord Sun's secretary, he had just been taken away by a white-haired youth. Now, Afeti finally understood that he could only accept this discount. Truly worthy of being called the black-faced god of the land of whirlpools, he thought to himself. He hadn't believed the finance minister of the land of whirlpools was so stingy, but now, he finally believed it. So stingy? Afeti spat on the ground, then looked at the discount notice and loan information in his hand, sighed, and muttered, "That's it." If he hadn't bought Lord Madara milk candy, tofu pudding, and health supplements, and of course, eaten most of them himself, how could he be penniless? So, he had to accept this discount, whether he liked it or not. Otherwise, that stern-faced god probably wouldn't have lent him the money. Afeti rubbed his tearless eyes and said sadly, "Today I want 2 bowls of tofu pudding, one sweet and one savory. HMPH. He wouldn't bring any for Lord Madara, who told him to demolish the house. He'd eat it all himself. Besides, because the Whirlpool Country affiliated academy was too far from the daycare, and the morning bus ride was too tiring, he didn't stay there but slept on the floor at the daycare. Thinking of this, Afetti felt another pang of sadness. He had worked so hard in the Whirlpool Country for so many years, and in the end, he had no savings and had to sleep on the floor. So heartbreaking. What a heartless daimyo! Afetti said angrily. He decided, tomorrow he would teach those kids to draw poop, to let them experience the sadness of teacher Afetti. Ugh, I mean art, achoo, achoo. Uzumaki-jun rubbed his nose and muttered, who's thinking about me? He. Jiraiya, seeing Uzumaki-jun sneeze, immediately put his arm around Uzumaki-jun's shoulder with schadenfreude and said, it must be that innocent girl you abandoned cursing you in her heart. Regarding the marriage of the daimyo of Uzumaki, basically everyone in Uzumaki knew about it, and there were even some unknown rumors. Serves him right. However, Uzumaki-jun glanced at Jiraiya sideways. He didn't know what right this single dog, who only wrote Icha Icha Paradise to imagine things and gather material, had to laugh at him. Was it because of Kato-dan's death? Besides, how could a chick know the ambitions of a great eagle? He disdained to explain to a single dog. Seeing Uzumaki-jun's eyes, Jiraiya was immediately speechless. Of course, he understood what the red-haired boy's eyes meant. He cursed inwardly, what a despicable brat. Then, with a flourish, he tossed his white hair and said melancholically, as a man as free as the wind. You don't understand the art I pursue. Especially since he was the dream of countless girls in the ninja world. If he married Tsunade, the other girls would be heartbroken, so, he could only have to make do with Tsunade. Besides, he really didn't understand the girls these days. Jiraiya was clearly more handsome, more powerful, and more humorous, so why didn't anyone like him? I see. Uzumaki-sun nodded knowingly, saying with admiration, I never imagined you were so great. He sighed, looking at Jiraiya, I was originally planning to teach you the millennia-old dating secrets of the land of whirlpools. Now it seems. I was just being presumptuous. Uzumaki-sun shook his head regretfully, saying, in that case, forget it. And then, he left Jiraiya completely dumbfounded. WTF. The land of whirlpools has such a secret, and, it's been passed down for 1,000 years. Is it still useful after all this time? But thinking about the kid's situation, Jiraiya's heart was filled with doubt. Perhaps, it really is useful? Otherwise, why doesn't any girl like him when he's clearly more outstanding? So, all he, the Toad Sage, and this daimyo of the land of whirlpools lack is a secret manual. Thinking of this, Jiraiya's eyes lit up, he seemed to have discovered some secret. He rubbed his hands together, a smile spreading across his face, and said shyly, Although this Toad Sage is already so outstanding, I don't mind being even more outstanding. So, can I borrow that book? Uzumaki-jun looked at Jiraiya speechlessly. As expected of the famous author who would write Family Paradise in the future. Since you're already so outstanding, Uzumaki-jun said helplessly, then for the sake of the countless girls in the ninja world, let's not do it. Yes, Jiraiya quickly nodded, saying with a serious face, let me critique it and see what needs to be revised. You know, I'm the dream of countless girls in the ninja world. Me, a billion girls. This shamelessness, being single for so long, it's definitely due to his abilities. Uzumaki-jun summoned the book of picking up girls. Helplessly handed it to him, and said, stop talking, here you go. He was afraid that if he listened any longer, he would hide him. When Jiraiya saw the book, he quickly and excitedly took it, but when he touched it, he was immediately puzzled. Wasn't it supposed to be passed down for 1,000 years? How come it's so new? Uzumaki-jun rolled his eyes. Of course it's new. After all, it's supposed to be passed down for 1,000 years, not that it has already been passed down for 1,000 years. You know, this book is. Jiraiya didn't care. Maybe the people of the land of whirlpools love books? He quickly opened the book, looking at the first page with a look of pilgrimage, and then, his face turned green. What is this thing? It says on it. Simps, in the end they get nothing. Soon Uzumaki Chapter 1. Chapter 296 5A Level Scenic Spot. Mount Myaboku. Great Sage, Fukasaku said, looking at the Great Toad Sage, slumped in his chair, wearing a long black hat and half closing his eyes. The red-haired brat you mentioned has arrived. Hearing Fukasaku's words, Gamamaru immediately opened his eyes, then narrowed them again, saying in a hoarse voice, "Finally here? Tell him I'm not fully awake yet. The rest. Take him to the Mount Myaboku trial." Hearing the Great Toad Sage's words, Fukasaku's eyes widened. That contract. The Mount Myaboku trial was for sage training. Those who could train basically had to sign a contract with Mount Myaboku. Jiraiya was like that, but because of his lack of talent, he'd only achieved a rudimentary level of skill. That red-haired brat. Was he going to become Jiraiya's apprentice? Or perhaps a junior brother? Let him be, Gamamaru sighed. If there's nothing else, go down. I'm tired. Now wasn't the time for him to see him. Okay. Fukasaku nodded upon hearing the Great Toad Sage's words and said, "Great Sage, please rest. I'll go now." He then hopped around and turned away. Gamamaru, watching Fukasaku's retreating figure, narrowed his eyes and muttered, "Is it finally here? He'd better just sleep well for now." He'd leave the rest to Fukasaku and the others. Although this book was indeed written by that wretched brat in front of him, there was no doubt, it was a good book. Jiraiya looked at the book in his hands with amusement, flipping through it with relish. After only reading a few pages, he suddenly felt enlightened. So there were so many ways to woo a girl. He suddenly felt. Tsunade was already in his grasp. Jiraiya's lips curled into a lewd smile as he muttered, I see. It seemed he had been too obsequious before. Otherwise, with his handsome appearance and strength comparable to a god of ninja, how could Tsunade not like him? That doesn't make sense. Now he understood, what you can't have always seems more alluring. So, next time he went back, he would definitely tell Tsunade that he, Jiraiya, was the man she could never have. However, Uzumaki-jun, standing beside him, looked at Jiraiya's expression strangely. To be able to smile like that while reading this kind of book, probably only the author of Makeout Paradise could manage that. His associative abilities were too strong. Of course, Uzumaki-jun didn't know what Jiraiya was thinking. If he did, he would definitely look at Jiraiya with the eyes of someone looking at an idiot. Did he really think Tsunade rejected him because he was too eager? It's because compared to Dan, he was not only ugly but also sleazy. If he continued to fawn over her like this, there might still be a sliver of hope, but once he gave up, Jiraiya would truly be a single dog for life. After all, a handsome person, even if you only offer her a white rabbit candy, she'll be moved, but if you're ugly, besides fawning over her and relying on persistent spirit to move the goddess, there's no other way. Although he didn't know what Jiraiya was thinking, Uzumaki-jun decided it was best not to disturb him and let him dream on his own. Perhaps Jiraiya could only dream about things now and in the future. As expected of one of the three sacred lands, Uzumaki-jun remarked, looking at the surrounding scenery. So beautiful. After arriving at Mount Myaboku, he didn't rush to find the Great Toad Sage, but instead strolled around the area. He had only caught glimpses of it in the anime back then. He hadn't expected that seeing it in person would be even more beautiful than in the anime. Beautiful, isn't it? Jiraiya said cheerfully, looking at Uzumaki-jun. You know, this is one of the three sacred lands. As for the book, he would save it for later to seriously study and critique it. Now wasn't the time for that. Then, looking at Uzumaki-jun with a complicated expression, he hadn't expected this kid to be able to write a book, and a book at that, truly worthy of being someone who could usher in a new era for the land of whirlpools. But Jiraiya, the Toad Sage, firmly believed that he would definitely become a writer even more amazing than this kid. He might even write a book surpassing the art of picking up girls. What's wrong? Seeing Jiraiya's complicated expression, Uzumaki-jun shivered. Had he gone mad from reading too much? Nothing. Jiraiya snapped out of his reverie, glanced at Mount Myaboku, and said, It's time to go see Lord Fukasaku. Let's go. Uzumaki-jun stretched, nodded, and said, Let's finish what we need to do while we still have time, and then leave. He knew how disgusting the food at Mount Myaboku was. Therefore, he had no intention of staying here to eat insects with a bunch of toads. As for Mount Myaboku, Uzumaki-jun looked around, a mysterious smile playing on his lips, and murmured, I'll be back. This was a 5A level scenic spot. If the land of whirlpools could develop this place, tisk tisk. Just thinking about it was interesting. A ticket costs 10,000 taels of silver, and adding another 100,000 allows you to experience the same sage mode training method as the god of shinobi. As for whether the training method is the same, and whether you can succeed, who knows about the god of shinobi? As the son-in-law of the Uzumaki clan, Hashirama Senju would surely be happy to advertise for the land of whirlpools. Besides, he did all that for the good of Mount Myaboku. History tells us that isolating oneself from the world and becoming detached from the masses is inappropriate. What? You're toads? So what? As long as you're intelligent beings, that's fine. And with so many people trying sage mode, who knows, maybe a few lucky ones out of hundreds of thousands, even millions, will succeed? Mount Myaboku will make a fortune then. What? There's not that much toad oil? What does that have to do with the land of whirlpools? We only charge admission, we don't provide after-sales service or raw materials. Just as Jun Uzumaki was lost in thought, figuring out how to persuade Mount Myaboku to open up. Jiraiya's here. Shima looked at Jiraiya, then at Jun Uzumaki, and said with a smile, "Is this the brat the great sage mentioned?" "Yes." Jiraiya nodded and said, "The current daimyo of the land of whirlpools, Jun Uzumaki." He looked around. "Where's Lord Fukasaku? Wasn't he supposed to be waiting here?" The old man. Shima was about to say that he had gone to the great toad sage when she suddenly sensed something, and then smiled and said, "He's back." Fukasaku walked slowly with his head down. He didn't understand why the great toad sage treated that red-haired boy that way. Was there some secret behind it? You know, the Mount Myaboku experiment can only be learned by the successors of Mount Myaboku, but this red-haired brat isn't one yet. In fact, judging from the great sage's intentions, whether or not there's a contract, whether or not he learns it, it's all up to that red-haired brat. Fukasaku couldn't understand. What was so special about that red-haired brat that the great sage treated him like this? And it seems the great immortal doesn't want to see him. Why is that? Could it be that the great toad immortal dreamed of something again? Chapter 2, that's all. I don't know if your Kidian website is down, but I've been on Zion.IU for 4 days now and still can't see any comments or ratings. I don't know why. Chapter 297 That day. Cultivation? He already knows it. Uzumaki soon sighed inwardly, looking at Fukasaku, who was solemnly explaining the dangers and benefits of cultivation. So many years had passed, he had long since acquired all 3 legendary eyes, and even upgraded his Byakugan. How could he not have acquired something as overpowered as Sage Mode? So, the great Toad Sage summoned him to arrange for other toads to teach him Sage Mode, and then he'd just sleep soundly? What was the meaning behind that? Uzumaki soon completely failed to understand the Toad Sage's intentions. Had the Chosen One changed? Touching his red hair, he was filled with emotion. Indeed, only the path of red righteousness could save the ninja world. But, actually, Uzumaki-jun said with an embarrassed smile, "I've already learned Sage Mode." "Yes, this time it's Sage Mode, the one from Mount Myaboku." Fukasaku, hands behind his back, walked back and forth in front of Uzumaki-jun with his 2 frog legs, solemnly telling him what to pay attention to during training, and what to do if he turned to stone. But, suddenly hearing Uzumaki-jun's words, he almost tripped. Turning his head, he looked at Uzumaki-jun with a serious expression and said, "What did you say?" Had he misheard? "That's Sage Mode, I've already learned it," Uzumaki-jun said modestly. "I don't need to learn it again." Was he the kind of man who had to learn ninjutsu on his own? After he turned 7, he no longer needed to rely on himself. However, Fukasaku, Shima, and Jiraiya, 1 toad and 1 human, looked at each other in bewilderment. Had they misheard? Turning his head, he looked at Uzumaki with a suspicious expression and said, "Really? You know, that's a sage technique. In the ninja world, only the 3 great holy lands possessed sage techniques, and even then, they required the use of their own local specialties to master them. The finished products would have some characteristics that match those of the 3 holy lands. Of course, the fewer the characteristics, the more perfect the sage technique. So, if you learned it, who would you learn it from?" Jiraiya sighed, shook his head, patted Uzumaki-sun's shoulder, and said, "Kid, you haven't mistaken me, have you? That's a sage technique. A sage technique on par with the god of the ninja world. You think you can just learn it like that? Do you think you're some kind of toad sage?" Uzumaki-sun glanced sideways at Jiraiya. "Your strength is only what I had when I was 8 years old, and you're still trying to act tough in front of me." He sighed. It seemed no one would believe him unless he showed off his skills. Then, he closed his eyes, then opened them again. He looked at the person and the toad with expressions of utter disbelief. "I'll scare you to death. WWH. Jiraiya rubbed his eyes, staring at Uzumaki-jun, touching his eyeshadow, and said suspiciously, "Is this really Sage Mode? Could it just be painted on?" But, slap. Fukasaku kicked Jiraiya away, then, with a serious expression, began to observe Uzumaki-jun, exclaiming in surprise, "This natural energy. There's no mistake. Perfect Sage Mode." Fukasaku exclaimed, then glanced disappointedly at Jiraiya, whom he had kicked away. "It's true what they say, comparisons are odious. But, why does this Sage Mode resemble the unique techniques of their Mount Myaboku? Jun?" Fukasaku stroked his chin with his toad claw, pondered for a moment, and said, "Where did you learn this Sage Mode? It really does seem more and more similar. But, without toad oil, how did he concoct it?" "This matter." Uzumaki-jun sighed and said, "It all started when I went fishing that noon. That day." "You learned it from the fish?" Fukasaku frowned and muttered, "That's not right." He had never heard of any place other than the Three Holy Lands where there was a way to cultivate immortality using sage techniques. "No." Uzumaki-jun shook his head and said, "I saw a frog, and then, I spaced out for a moment, and unconsciously learned it." "A frog?" Jiraiya snapped out of his daze. "This Fukasaku-sama, really, after all this time, hasn't he changed his habit of kicking people in the face? Doesn't he, the toad sage, need to survive?" He looked at Fukasaku suspiciously and cautiously asked, "The same kind?" There seemed to be frogs among the toads of Mount Myaboku. However, smack. Fukasaku kicked Jiraiya away again. "Mount Myaboku only has toads. What about that frog?" Fukasaku pondered for a moment and said, "Could you take me to see it? Perhaps it was a toad from Mount Myaboku. A toad that looks like a frog." "This." Uzumaki soon hesitated for a moment, then finally sighed and said, "Because I didn't catch any fish in the end, I turned them into stir-fried frogs. He ate them. Looks like he doesn't need to see them anymore. They were probably just ordinary frogs, otherwise why would they be eaten?" Fukasaku sighed, looking at Uzumaki-sun in front of him. Could it really be that he learned it without even realizing it? Seeing Fukasaku's puzzled expression, Uzumaki-sun narrowed his eyes. It seemed he had to show some real skill. A slight smile appeared on his lips as he said, "Until one day, I went fishing." "You saw frogs again?" Fukasaku asked suspiciously, then slowly learned the perfect sage technique. "No." Uzumaki-sun grinned, narrowing his eyes, and said, "That day, a snake suddenly appeared." He suddenly wondered, what would the expressions of the Three Holy Lands be like after he had learned all the sage techniques? So, Uzumaki-sun closed his eyes again, changing his pose once more. The scene fell silent again. "This is..." Jiraiya returned, staring wide-eyed at Uzumaki-jun. After a moment's thought, he said, "What is this? Why is your skin so white?" Smack. Fukasaku kicked Jiraiya away again, looking at Uzumaki-jun with a sigh. "A sage technique from Raichi Cave. I didn't expect you to have even learned this. Aren't you afraid of a backlash? It seems this Uzumaki-jun is truly a genius, even mastering Raichi Cave Sage Mode. No wonder the Great Toad Sage invited him. But, why isn't he here?" Fukasaku looked Uzumaki-jun up and down with a puzzled expression, saying, "Then, what about the snake?" "Because I didn't catch any fish again," Uzumaki-jun said regretfully, "so I made it into snake soup. And I must say, it tastes pretty good." Fukasaku and Shima quietly watched Uzumaki-jun, suddenly unsure what to say. Are people these days really that scary? Oh well, a snake that humans would eat probably isn't from Raichi Cave. Before Fukasaku and Shima could finish their reflections. A few days later, the weather wasn't as sunny as before, it was a bit chilly outside, but I was bored, Uzumaki-jun said with a reminiscent look, so I went fishing again. What did they encounter this time? Fukasaku and Shima suddenly felt a chill, a bad feeling creeping over them. Could it be? "I encountered a slug," Uzumaki-jun said regretfully. "This time I didn't encounter any frogs or snakes." Then, he looked up, a smile appearing on his face. "That day, I unconsciously spaced out again." He closed his eyes again. Sure enough. Seeing this, Fukasaku and Shima were filled with emotion. This was the sage art of Shikatsu Forest. "What about that slug?" Shima asked curiously. "Did you eat it again?" "No," Uzumaki-jun shook his head. It was too disgusting, I couldn't bring myself to eat it, and besides, I caught a fish that day. So I made fish soup. Why didn't Jiraiya come closer this time? Was he scared after being kicked by Fukasaku? Without him, I can't even properly show off. Turning my head to look in the direction Jiraiya had been kicked away, I saw a desolate, sorrowful figure squatting on the ground drawing circles. Chapter 1. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 298 Tenfold. Who am I? Where am I? Where am I going? Jiraiya was bewildered. He'd already gone through so much trouble learning Sage Mode from Mount Myaboku, how much toad oil he'd used, how many beatings he'd endured, how many meals of insects he'd eaten, before even mastering it perfectly. Why could that brat learn it all on his own? 3 of them. Those were 3 perfect Sage Modes. Jiraiya's heart filled with sorrow. He murmured, is that what genius is? His toad sage suddenly didn't want to be friends with him anymore. He'd be hurt. But little did he know. Fukasaku and Shima were staring at Uzumaki with disbelief. 3 Sage Modes. Could a human possibly learn that? Fukasaku now deeply doubted what the great toad sage wanted him for. To teach this Uzumaki-jun Sage Mode? Did he even need to be taught? Fukasaku himself probably wanted this brat to teach him. He sighed inwardly. He hadn't expected such a genius to emerge in the ninja world. Even the god of shinobi back then wasn't this powerful. This was simply bizarre. So, what should he do next? Fukasaku suddenly fell silent, thinking to himself, Great Toad Sage, is there anything else Mount Myaboku can teach me? Perhaps the frog katatami technique? Meanwhile, Uzumaki-jun narrowed his eyes, smiling at Fukasaku, and said, what should we do next? He wondered if he could take a day trip to the 3 sacred sites. Getting familiar with the future 5A level tourist attractions of the Land of Whirlpools would be good. And, the Great Toad Sage, what was he dreaming about again? Why wasn't he seeing him? Did he have anything to say to him? He was a staunch supporter of Yang Jian, Chen Xiang, and Black Zetsu. So, what exactly did the Toad Sage want to do? Wasn't he afraid that he would release Kaguya, allowing Black Zetsu and his mother to reunite? But now, unless they fought their way in, they wouldn't see that Gamaru was stirring up trouble between the mother and son. How about? Fukasaku pondered for a moment, then said, shall we have dinner first? To try some authentic local cuisine from Mount Myaboku. Although it was still a bit early for dinner, it didn't know what else to do besides eat. However, upon hearing Fukasaku's words, Uzumaki-jun's expression immediately changed, and he said, no need. Then, he walked to Jiraiya's side and pulled him up. We suddenly remembered we have something to do, so we won't stay for dinner. He wasn't Bear Grylls, he wasn't interested in eating bugs. Dinner. Hearing these 2 words, Jiraiya immediately came to his senses and quickly nodded, saying, yes, we need to leave quickly. If they didn't leave soon, they would have to stay here and eat bugs. Why did he wait until noon to bring people over? Wasn't it to avoid being kept here by Lord Fukasaku? He quickly pulled Uzumaki-jun, summoned a toad, and used the reverse summoning jutsu. Bang! It disappeared. Actually, Fukasaku sighed, watching Jiraiya and Jun Uzumaki leave, and said, I was thinking of asking Jun after dinner if he wanted to make a contract with Mount Myaboku. This was something the Great Toad Sage had told him to do, but now, they were already gone. Never mind, Shima said, we can have Jiraiya ask him next time. Then, looking at the sky outside. What should we do now? It's still early. Should we really have dinner? Fukasaku frowned and pondered for a moment, then said, old woman, you decide for yourself. I'll go to the Great Sage's place again. He wanted to talk to the Great Sage about that red-haired brat and ask what to do next. It seemed like the kid didn't need Mount Myaboku's help at all. Alright, Shima nodded and said, then I'll go find some more insects. We'll have a good meal today. She was just scared by the red-haired kid's 3 Sage Modes, so she needed to eat more insects to recover. And, should I tell Shikatsu Forest and Ryochi Cave next time? Sigh. Jiraiya glanced at Uzumaki-jun with a complicated expression, then sighed and said nothing. He didn't want to see this person right now, He just wanted to find a place to properly gather materials. But what's wrong? Uzumaki-jun looked at Jiraiya's expression and asked in confusion. Why does he look so downcast? He's not his usual goofy self at all. Could it be that he was discouraged by his 3 perfect sage modes? That's right. He didn't look like a ninja at all. You know, Jiraiya didn't even learn sage mode before he died. Indeed, he was too much of a genius. Uzumaki-jun patted Jiraiya on the shoulder and said with a sigh, don't be sad. I'm just a little more handsome than you. Just as Jiraiya looked up, expectantly at Uzumaki-jun, waiting for his comfort. A little more handsome than you, a little more powerful than you, a little more rich than you, a little more. Uzumaki-jun said in a comforting tone, that's nothing. So, be optimistic. I don't want to talk to you. Doesn't this toad sage have any shame? Jiraiya covered his face and shook off Uzumaki-jun's hand. He wanted to leave. He never wanted to see this hateful brat again. Why is it so expensive? Toby looked at the quote the construction team had given him and asked, I remember renovations and rebuilds shouldn't cost this much? It's almost like buying another house. My sir, the construction team leader sighed, this place is huge. Almost 400 square meters, and the price is already a 9.9% discount. That's quite a good deal, 9.9% discount. Afei didn't know what to say. With a puzzled look, he said, but this price is almost as much as what I paid for this house back then. Times have changed, the construction team leader said, closing the price list. This piece of land, this location, this much area, has tripled in value. House prices change every day. Do you think it's still the same as before? So expensive? Afei was immediately stunned. How long has it been? House prices in the land of whirlpools have skyrocketed already? Yes. The construction team leader sighed, saying with emotion, luckily, we bought it early. Then, looking at Afei, he added, and the reconstruction price isn't actually that expensive, considering all the good materials used. This reconstruction will include underfloor heating and chakra hot water. Just a simple turn of the tap and hot water will come out, and actually, I can boil water myself, Afei said weakly. But the construction team leader ignored Afei's words and continued, also, after the renovation is complete, we'll give you some furniture, such as a sofa, dining table, chandelier, toilet, chakra furnace. It's quite a bargain when you calculate it like this. So, he handed over the contract, flashing 8 teeth, and said with a smile, what are you waiting for? Sign it. Buying it is a steal. Actually, we're a poor family, used to living in a cave. Afei shook his head resolutely, we're used to hard life, we're not used to enjoying life. No money. The interest rates are too high. If they continue building at this price, they'll have to cut back on food and clothing. Since that's the case. Hearing Afei's words, the construction team leader withdrew the contract, sighed, and said, let's rebuild it according to the old specifications. You know how many people want this kind of new housing now, comfortable, stable, and odorless. If the construction team leader looked at the surrounding ruins, shook his head, and showed a regretful expression. If we rebuild it this way, this place could be worth at least 4 or 5 times, even 10 times. What a pity. Such a good place. 10 times. Hearing the construction team leader's words, Afei's eyelids twitched, then he said calmly, actually, my family isn't short of money. Give me the contract. Build it according to the new type of housing you just mentioned. He didn't care about the hardship or fatigue. As long as Lord Madara was comfortable, that was enough. Lord Madara was already very old. Therefore, Afei, would definitely give Lord Madara the best living environment. Let Lord Madara enjoy his retirement. Chapter 2, Nothing More. Chapter 299 Cell Phone. Today, the weather was sunny. Thinking he had nothing much to do, Uzumaki soon decided to go for a walk instead of staying in his office. Looking at the bustling land reclamation project in the Eastern Sea, Uzumaki soon nodded in satisfaction. This was a magnificent project for the land of whirlpools. Especially because of this project, the migrant workers in the land of whirlpools were very excited, and their work enthusiasm had greatly increased. After all, the larger the territory, the more household registrations the land of whirlpools issued, and the greater their opportunities. Having lived here for 2 years, no one wanted to go back. In the land of whirlpools, there was protection. As long as you didn't break a law or violate the rules, No one would care about you. Even if you were bullied, you could call the police. At first, they didn't believe it. After all, why would high-ranking ninjas help them? Until one day, a family of 3 arrived in the land of whirlpools, but because they had lost their money, they had no money for food or rent. Finally, they decided to try calling the police. Although they didn't have much money, it was their hope for survival. Once that hope was gone, then they wouldn't care about anything else. As a result, the police recovered his money that very afternoon. As for the thief, since it was his first day in the land of whirlpools and he had broken the law, he was expelled and permanently banned from entering the country. Seeing this, they became even more compliant with the laws and regulations of the land of whirlpools, because no one wanted to leave. Your Highness, Ping said, seeing Uzumaki soon approach, quickly putting down his work and running over, Lord Li has gone to sea. Should we have him come? Dad? Uzumaki soon looked at Ping, puzzled. Why is he at sea as the Minister of Infrastructure? Should he be here watching over things? He's probably going to operate the land reclamation equipment. Uzumaki Xiong shook his head helplessly at Ping's strange expression. It seemed he had guessed correctly. Oh well, since Dad loves sailing so much, let him be. He patted Ping's shoulder and said, never mind, you go ahead and do your work. I just came to take a look and won't disturb your work. Then, without waiting for Ping's reply, he walked directly towards the sea ahead. Uzumaki soon didn't know if Earth's land reclamation methods would work in the ninja world. After all, this was the first time such a thing had been done, and no one could say for sure. But if it failed, the land of whirlpools would probably only be able to become a peace envoy for the ninja world, leading more civilians to bask in the light of communism. Fortunately, the preparations hadn't gone wrong, and it seemed feasible so far. Feeling the working atmosphere around him, Uzumaki soon nodded in satisfaction. Everyone seemed very motivated. Especially. Uzumaki soon squinted at a piece of equipment under construction at sea and murmured, the Four Tails Jinchuariki. This old purple's work ethic was incredibly diligent. He'd heard that the one who did the most land reclamation was this bearded man, so this uncle hadn't had time to sell chakra these past few days. Sigh, Uzumaki soon shook his head regretfully, saying, I was hoping to save up some more Four Tails chakra to prepare for the future. Hopefully, he wouldn't become obsessed with land reclamation. Otherwise, without enough chakra, Black Zetsu would definitely capture him and use him to fill the Gato Mazo. Achoo, achoo. Old Purple rubbed his nose, looking at the energy controller in front of him, and muttered, could it be because of the sea breeze these past few days, plus working so hard, that I've gotten sick? Don't be silly. Sun Wukong said calmly in Old Purple's mind, someone's probably cursing you. Impossible. Old Purple shook his head and said, I've been working in the land of whirlpools for the past few years and haven't offended anyone. Who would curse me? Maybe it's that such chickage? Sun Wukong curled his lip and said disdainfully, with your stubborn temper, you've already forgotten the people you offended in the past. Hearing Sun Wukong's words, Old Purple was silent for a moment, and finally sighed, saying, tell me, what would happen if I brought the land of whirlpool system back to the land of Earth or the hidden stone village? You'd be killed. Sun Wukong narrowed his eyes and said without thinking, when you go to your death, remember to release me. I don't want to go with you. Those old stubborns in the hidden stone village, how could they possibly agree to that? So, stop dreaming, young man. Sun Wukong sighed and shook his head. You'd better just stay here obediently. You have a house to live in, and candy to eat, what more could you want? Yet, Old Purple nodded with a sigh, saying with a wry smile, it's impossible to turn Iwagakure into something like Uzumaki. Those stubborn people won't give up their power and let ninjas serve the people, unless, like Uzumaki, they just destroy the village. Forget it. Old Purple shook his head and said, I'm not thinking about it anymore. I'm no longer a ninja of Iwagakure. A smile appeared on his face as he looked at the sea before him. Hurry up, Four Tails, output more chakra. Today, we at least need to fill this area completely. The more we fill, the more salary we get. So, what are you waiting for? Same as always, 100 each, Sun Wukong said. If you don't agree, you'll be working overtime. Old Purple touched his teeth, looked up at the sun hanging in the sky, and muttered, time for lunch. Fruit soup. I'd better get my teeth cleaned after get off work. Any new inventions this time? Uzumaki soon looked at the excited Chiro in front of him and asked curiously, why did you call me here so urgently? He had originally planned to stroll around the land of whirlpools today, but he didn't expect to be dragged here by Chiro halfway through. And, judging from Chiro's expression, she must have some good stuff again. It's a success, Chiro said excitedly. That thing is a success. What's a success? Uzumaki soon looked at a chakra balance scooter floating low in the air next to him. Could it be something like that? Impossible. You know, this kind of thing isn't complicated. After all, even hovercars have come out. Making a balance scooter or a wheeled scooter is too simple. So, it definitely isn't this. No need to look anymore. Kaianluo saw the look in Uzumaki-sun's eyes and knew what he was thinking, so he quickly shook his head and said, the hoverboard has been successfully developed. We can set up a production line and start production tomorrow. He thought this hoverboard was even better than a car, convenient, simple, and adaptable to various environments. But that's not what I want to talk about. Kaianluo pulled out a small box and said excitedly, it's this. A cell phone. I've successfully developed it. Looking at the box in Kaianluo's hand, Uzumaki-sun was stunned and said, successfully developed? What about the number? You know, the most important thing about a cell phone is the number. If it can't be successfully recognized, then it's just like a walkie-talkie, isn't it? It's a success. Kaianluo nodded, her face serious. I got the inspiration from the computer programming and applications book you showed me. We divide chakra into 0s and 1s based on their concentration and frequency. Then we arrange these numbers into numbers of different lengths. Finally, signal towers receive and process them, distinguishing them and connecting them to their respective frequency numbers. Kaianluo looked at the frowning Uzumaki-sun and asked, did you understand? He roughly understood. Uzumaki-sun nodded expressionlessly. He hadn't expected, the ninja world's phone numbers had become computer language. Oh well, 01 isn't bad either, it's just a character for identification anyway. But, now the land of whirlpools is going to start rebuilding base stations? Chapter 1. Chapter 300 will feature Black Zetsu. Graduation is here? Obito murmured, looking at his graduation certificate in a daze. Time flies. He hadn't expected 6 years of compulsory education to pass by so quickly. Although, he had always been the worst student in the academy, and even now he couldn't master the basic ninjutsu taught by the academy and his clan, let alone his clan's Sharingan. But Obito wasn't afraid. He always believed in the motto that Lord Sun had displayed at the academy. Everyone has their own unique talent. Even if his ninjutsu wasn't proficient and he hadn't awakened his Sharingan, he believed he would succeed. At least, the police in the land of whirlpools didn't necessarily need ninjas, and besides, he was quite skilled in his clan's throwing techniques, of course, assuming no accidents occurred. Obito touched his pouch, sighed, and said helplessly, as expected, I forgot to bring my shuriken today. But, oh well, there wouldn't be any danger in the land of whirlpools anyway. So, Obito didn't care, still smiling, and looked at the sky. Time to hurry home. After dinner, he went out to train. He needed to master his clan's fireball jutsu by now. Otherwise, with his current strength, he probably wouldn't graduate. Without a diploma, how could he apply for a position in the Public Security Bureau? Obito clenched his right fist, mentally encouraging himself. Then, he looked up at the traffic light in the distance, paused, and quickly called out, wait. He jogged towards the intersection, placing his hands on the back of a wheelchair occupied by an elderly man with gray hair and a wrinkled face. A smile played on his lips. Grandpa, let me push you across. The traffic light intersection was so dangerous. Why was this old man alone here? Where were his family? Honestly, even if you're busy, you can't let such an old man go out alone. The old man looked up, quietly observing the young man before him. Suddenly, he sensed something, then nodded expressionlessly and said, okay. It had been a long time since he'd done a 5-year plan. Uzumaki-sun had Uzumaki Hibiki distribute the meeting materials to everyone present, saying, this 5-year plan mainly includes the Eastern Sea Reclamation Plan of the Land of Whirlpools discussed a few days ago, and the Comprehensive Communication Coverage Plan of the Land of Whirlpools. It's all detailed above, please take a look. For such major construction projects, a plan is always a safer bet. It's imperative to ensure sufficient land is reclaimed for habitation within 5 years, and to achieve nationwide communication coverage in the land of whirlpools. A cell phone. The clan leader exclaimed, looking at the description. I never thought it would actually be invented. Such a small box, yet it could actually facilitate communication. If he hadn't seen it now, he would have thought Uzumaki-san was lying. Currently, large-scale communication isn't possible in the ninja world. Uzumaki-san shook his head, saying, but I believe it will be possible in the future. The satellite launch and communication satellite technologies have been handed over to Chiro. He's confident Chiro will master them and develop communication technology unique to the ninja world. But, what will the Otsutsuki on the moon think when they see a small tail suddenly appear in the sky? If we destroy it then? Uzumaki-san narrowed his eyes and muttered, it seems I'll have to go up to the sky and tell them. If possible. He could also have them keep an eye on the satellite and perform regular maintenance. Perhaps in the future, building a space station will depend on these lunar Otsutsuki clan members. After hearing Uzumaki-san's words, Uzumaki nodded and said, understood, I will have the infrastructure team cooperate. He hadn't even gone out to sea this morning, and was dragged here for a meeting. He thought it was something serious. Couldn't he just tell him about something so trivial? What a waste of time. Soon is so busy, doesn't he even bother to see Kushina? However, no, that's not the point of today. Uzumaki-san shook his head and said seriously, there's something important that requires your cooperation. The 5-year plan was just for convenience. What I'm about to say is the real issue. What is it? Just say it, the clan chief frowned and said. You can arrange how you need our cooperation. Since that's the case, Uzumaki-san nodded and said, then I'll say it. He sighed, looking at them with deep eyes, war. It's about to start again. Hearing Uzumaki-san's words, everyone looked at him in disbelief. The war had only just ended, how could it be starting again? And, if it was war, couldn't the land of whirlpools just hide like last time? No. Uzumaki-san shook his head with a wry smile and said, this time, the land of whirlpools can't avoid it. Did you all notice today? Isn't Kakuzu here? Why hasn't anyone asked him since the meeting started? Hearing Uzumaki-san's words, everyone was stunned, looking at the empty seat. Yes. How could they have forgotten about the land of whirlpools' stingy, ruthless, and unreasonable Minister of Finance? The clan chief smiled apologetically and said, where's the Minister of Finance? They really had forgotten. We're all colleagues. Even though you don't owe him money, you can't just ignore him. Besides, never mind, Kakuzu isn't here anyway, he definitely won't be sad. Uzumaki-jun sighed and said helplessly, Kakuzu went out on a mission this time. Jiraiya wasn't joking when he said he was leaving. Because he was worried about the ninja sword and that mysterious organization, he left a few days ago, and Kakuzu went with him. However, he wouldn't go to Konoha with Jiraiya. Kakuzu would change course and go to the land of iron halfway through. After all, taking the ninja sword to Konoha, he probably wouldn't be able to say I fought the god of shinobi anymore. And, the land of whirlpools is also changing its Minister of Finance. You all know the true situation in the land of whirlpools. They've already picked up so many bloodline limits, and with the opening to the outside world, so many civilians and ninjas have poured in. He didn't believe that after all these years, other ninja villages still didn't know about those bloodline limits. So, Uzumaki-san narrowed his eyes and said, only by muddying the waters can we buy more time. The current situation in the land of whirlpools is definitely not suitable for fighting on home soil. Once war is declared, they must all be kept out. So many people, so many buildings, so many base stations. Fighting in the land of whirlpools, even if we win, will likely result in heavy losses. But it won't last long. Uzumaki-san shook his head and said, at most 2 years, at least 3 months, that's when the war begins. How long it can last depends on Black Zetsu's resolve. So, we must begin pre-war preparations now. All supplies, equipment, and plans must be prepared. Uzumaki-san looked at the clan leader and the others, and said seriously, the land of whirlpools can only win, not lose. If they lose, the land of whirlpools will be annihilated, and everything will benefit other countries and ninja villages. So, it's up to you. Zetsu. Chapter 2, No More. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all, see you in the next video.